Hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Enjoy the fanfic, and let's begin part 2. Naruto and Danzo looked at each other. The blonde found himself rather impressed. Despite the old warhawk not expecting his presence, he didn't seem inwardly surprised. That said, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki could see the tell signs of agitation across the man's visage. His old bones clenched on his cane and his posture was much more rigid than when it had been a moment ago. How did you get in here? Tell me everything, Naruto. We've known each other for many years, Danzo said. Naruto rolled his eyes. He could already feel the Sharingan trying to place him under a genjutsu. Well, at least the Sharingan works the same. I guess that's one thing this world's got going for it, he thought to himself before he inwardly shrugged to himself. You can stop the genjutsu attempts, Danzo. You're 80 years too early to be trying to place someone like me in a genjutsu. I will applaud the attempt however, but as I've said, I don't have a lot of time. So instead of playing 20 questions with each other, I'll get right to the point. You and Root work for me now. Every agent, every mission, every contact, they're all mine now, Naruto claimed with a smile on his face while Danzo frowned. How did this boy know he'd tried to cast a genjutsu? Danzo walked into the room, his cane knocking against the floor. I see. Reports of you claimed that you were an idiot boy, but it seems I might need to revise my methods, Danzo said as he snapped his fingers. Instantly, Naruto noticed he was surrounded by 5 Root Anbu. He whistled. I'll give you one chance, Danzo-kun. I could take the information I wanted, but it's always nice to be given it willingly. Stop this nonsense and lower your head quietly. In honor of my memory of you and what I've learned through history, I will make you a part of something grander than anything Konoha could ever become. However, if you keep up this resistance, I'll show you just how much you lack in the ways of the world, the blonde said. The leader of Root stabbed the ground. Subdue him. Don't kill him. Prepare to subject him for conditioning, he replied while Naruto sighed. To be honest, Danzo had been a shinobi for a long time. He'd seen many things in his life. He'd seen the power of the Nadaime, Shadaime, and Uchiha Madara. He'd seen the power of the Kyuubi no Yoko. At some point, he'd been desensitized to the mighty powers of destruction caused by ninjutsu around him. However, what he saw now was unlike what he'd ever seen. All 5 Root members were on the ground, dead. He knew because he could see blood trailing from their masks and onto the floor. Conditioning, Danzo. Really? Everyone loves a patriot, but no one loves an extremist, Naruto said as he looked over some of the papers. I wonder what Sasuke would think if his brother was told to kill the Uchiha clan on Konoha's orders. So many nasty little things you've done, Naruto replied before he tilted his head to the side from a kunai that sailed past his cheek and stabbed into the wall. His smile fell to a frown. He closed the folder. Gotcha. Alright. I could end this easily, but I'll make you despair under the weight of your own senile stupidity, Datbeo. I will make you watch as I take away everything you've built and use it in my service. Just so you know, you asked for this. Danzo widened his eyes. One instant, Naruto was behind his desk. The blonde had his fist buried in the man's face. The council member felt immense pain rush through his body before he was blasted through the door and into the wall which cracked behind him. The wind expelled from his lungs before he slumped to the ground. What kind of power was that? The Kyuubi Jinchuriki was never this strong. The Sharingan couldn't even properly follow him, the old man thought to himself as he groaned. Congratulations, Danzo-kun. You're the first person I'll fight in this new world. Why didn't you allow your Root shinobi to participate in the Kyuubi attack? Naruto asked as he walked out of the office. A trail of blood fell down Danzo's lip before he quickly got up and charged at the blonde. He threw a punch which the young boy blocked. The old man then swung his body and aimed for a kick. Though his speed was great, he gawked when the Kyuubi Jinchuriki blocked that as well. Why are you working with Orochimaru? He asked as he backflipped away from a kick that crushed the wall next to him. He landed a few ways down the hallway as Danzo slapped his hands together. Kazanami, he exclaimed as Naruto saw the old warhawk's hand coat itself in wind chakra. It quickly became a very thin blade. A grunt, Danzo swung his arm at the blue-eyed boy. Naruto had to admit, it wasn't a bad strategy. Wind jutsu was already hard to see. Never mind trying to see it in the dark. However, before you die, let me show you what a real wind blade looks like. Naruto exclaimed as he coated his arm in wind chakra as well. The two blades clashed against each other as a gale of wind blasted through the tunnels of the root quarters. He even knows elemental jutsu. What is this boy? Danzo wondered before he noticed the wind in his own jutsu get cut to pieces until it forced him to back away. The blade of wind from Naruto sliced through the air in one swift motion. Then, the old Shimura man gasped when he heard something start to creak. He noticed it was the pipe and line work inside the walls. He cut through the stone, the pipes, and the structure of the hallways. Danzo thought in shock as the hallway slowly started to crumble away. The old man glared back at the blonde while Naruto's lips curved upwards. Not bad for the dead last of the academy, right? The blonde taunted before he vanished right in front of Danzo's eyes. The old man quickly growled as the entire hallway started coming down around him. He ran through the open door entrance just in time. Then, he watched in shock as the blade of wind Naruto used brought the entire corridor sliding down until it crashed to pieces. Come on, Danzo-kun. You studied under the Nadaime Hokage. Don't tell me it amounted to this. The blonde's voice reverberated through the entire underground halls. The council member clenched his fists. Whatever, the boy's a threat for now. I'll make sure to crush him beneath the full weight of root. I'll get my answers for this. Has everything in his profile been a lie? Danzo thought before he snapped his fingers. Instantly, over 30 members of Root were in front of him. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki has infiltrated our organization. He is extremely dangerous. Find him and subdue him. I want him captured alive. Any means at your disposal are allowed. Failure is not an option. He exclaimed. Hi, Danzo-sama. They all said before everyone heard clapping. If Root members were capable of showing emotion, they would have been shocked when they saw Naruto sitting on a railing right behind their leader. Really, Danzo? You're gonna send so many young people to their deaths just so you can capture me? Why not just fight me yourself? Show them all what the powerful Danzo can do. You know fully well these people won't stop me and I'd rather not kill them. It's not good if a new employer goes around killing old employees. Let's not count the other 5 though, he said with a smile. Does the Hokage handle every genin or chunin that makes a claim for his title? You are no different, boy, Danzo replied before Naruto rolled his eyes and sighed. He then held out his hand. Futon. Daika's tenon, wind release. Great wind pull. Naruto uttered and suddenly everyone felt a massive gust of wind come from behind them, but the members of Root quickly heard Danzo gasp. The wind was so strong it pulled the man to the blonde. He then grabbed the Warhawk by his neck. Why didn't Konoha help the Uzumaki when they were destroyed? He asked. Attack! Danzo exclaimed. Naruto turned his gaze to the Root members. They were all charging straight for him. Some were even beginning to cast jutsu. Fall! Naruto commanded as he held Danzo by the throat. Danzo could do nothing but watch as the members of Root that he had groomed for so many years fell to the ground by some unknown force. Some of them tried to move, but they seemed to be shivering, fearful, scared. Why? Why was this happening? He had worked hard to burn the very concept of fear from the spirits of his men. They'd all endured ruthless, almost inhuman levels of training by his hand. How could they show such emotion before the enemy? He could even hear the sounds of their kunai from their shaking knocking against the floor. There's a difference between being afraid of dying and being afraid of death, Danzo-kun. You might have not made them afraid of death, but you didn't make them afraid of dying. No matter how hard you work, no matter how hard you train, you can't take away the natural fear of dying. Everyone's got it and no amount of conditioning's gonna stop that, especially when the force in front of you is so much stronger. I just made them realize who they were messing with. A Hokage might not handle every genin that comes to claim his title, but neither does Kami to every mortal that stands before her, he answered while Danzo scowled. He quickly moved his body and kicked Naruto in the face. For the sake of appearances, the blonde recoiled and released his grip. The bandaged man sailed through the air, whipping through hand signs as he did so. Futon. Shinku Renpa, wind release. Vacuum serial waves, Danzo hollered before he took in a deep breath and blew a series of several wind blades at the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. The young genin sighed. He then held up a finger. I'd ask you to take this seriously, but I feel you are. It seems I have a lot of work to do. Futon. Kazakiri. Isan wind release. Wind cutter. Single sharp point, he returned as his finger became coated in wind chakra. He then released it in a single blade blast. Like an incredibly long spear, the blast of wind broke through the wind blades and struck through Danzo's stomach. Gah! He groaned in pain as the spear of wind pushed through his stomach and through his back. A gob of blood expelled from his lips as Naruto swiped his fingers to the left. The blade spear slashed open Danzo's midsection. The root operatives could only watch as their leader got decimated by the force of the one that brought them to their knees. Naruto narrowed his eyes when he felt the chakra of one of the eyes on Danzo's arm close. He then turned around and saw the man standing behind him. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki stopped his jutsu. The Izanagi of the Uchiha clan's Sharingan. A get-out-of-jail-free card. So everything I've done to him was just an illusion. Impressive. Even I can't properly counter that. However, his chakra dropped considerably, Naruto thought to himself. Danzo spoke. You are powerful, boy. However, there is nothing you can do, for I control reality itself around us. This little farce that you're attempting will not. You. The old warhawk suddenly screamed as Naruto clenched his right hand and yanked it to his chest. Danzo's torso exploded as grotesque muscle tissue and sinew spilled from his open wounds. What the? He didn't even move. How did he? Danzo fell to the ground dead while Naruto's lips curved upwards. He'd dealt with Izanagi users before. Their genjutsu actually wasn't all that great. Indeed, while it could bend reality around them, it wasn't for a long time. Back in his world, an Uchiha could use the Izanagi for 10 whole minutes before the jutsu wore off. That meant they had a total of 20 minutes in each eye. In a world of impure chakra like this, Naruto highly doubted the same could be said for Danzo. Besides, all he had to do was keep killing the old man until his chakra ran out. As the blonde expected, the old man's body disappeared and an uninjured one was made. Another eye closed. What did you do to me? Danzo asked. Naruto shrugged. Even if I explained it to you, you wouldn't understand it. That's a whole class I'd have to teach Datbeo. Let's just say I grabbed your chakra veins and yanked them out. That's the simple version. I think I just have to do that 8 more times before you're all out of video game retries, he replied. I'll be sure to get it out of you when you've been brought down, Danzo replied. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki sighed. Really, Danzo? He asked before he grabbed and yanked again. It wasn't long before Danzo died again, and another eye closed. Do you really think that when I can do that to you that you've got a chance at winning? I'm being merciful to you out of what you've done for Konoha in your old life. You and Root belong to me now. You don't work for Konoha. You work for my interest, he replied. And what are your interests? Danzo asked, panting from the burn on his chakra he was exerting. Naruto merely smiled. Would you tell your operatives your interests? He asked before he held up a finger. He fired another wind blade and found himself impressed that the old man still had the ability to dodge. Danzo jumped around as Naruto fired blast after blast. He threw out a few more and quickly turned around to block the strike that came from a shadow clone. The clone widened its eyes before Naruto grabbed its head and made it dispel by slamming it on the ground. When his head turned to look at his work, that was when Danzo chose to attack. Ninpo. Cage Shuriken no Jutsu, Shinobi Art. Shadow Shuriken Technique. Futon. Shinku Renpa. Danzo called out both techniques. He threw a load of shuriken at Naruto before he blew a wave of wind chakra over them. The weapon spun wildly through the air, enhanced by the jutsu. He watched his attacks sail for the young man. However, nothing could have prepared Danzo for when he saw Naruto place one foot behind the other. With his Sharingan, he saw the boy open his Tenketsu, releasing a massive exertion of chakra before he suddenly started spinning. That's Junsuina Chakura. Zenshin Kaden, pure chakra. All body revolving heaven, Naruto hollered as the Root members and Danzo watched a technique similar to that of the Hyuga clan's most powerful defense get utilized by the Academy failure. The wind shuriken crashed into the rotating dome of white chakra. It was so white Danzo had trouble even looking at it with his Sharingan lest he go blind. The technique blasted the shuriken away while Naruto slowed his spinning. He smirked. Yeah, he'd read about the Hyuga clan. He'd seen many of them fight in Iruka and Mizuki's memories. While it was true that the Kaden was Hyuga ability, it wasn't exactly a technique that no one couldn't learn. What made the technique difficult was that most shinobi couldn't control the chakra within all their tenketsu. Then they had to maintain that chakra while constantly spinning. Indeed, hard to do, but definitely not impossible. In fact, the Kaden was taught to most Jonin shinobi by the Hyuga clan in Naruto's world. To be a Jonin, you had to master several jutsu such as the Kaden. Of course, it's not like I can use the Hyuga clan's gentle fist. I'd need the Byakugan for that. That's one of the very few instances of an actually Kekkei Genkei that can only be passed through genetics or transplants, the blonde thought before he sighed. He then dusted off his clothes. Alright, Danzo-kun. I think I've toyed with you long enough. I'll give you one more chance. Submit to me and hand over your root division to me. Do so and I'll let you live. Do not and I'll make you wish that you did. I'll give you to the count of 10. 1, 2, 3, Naruto replied while Danzo scowled. Was he really being pushed back by a little boy? One who hadn't even spent a month out of the academy. This was like a bad joke. 8, 9. I am Shimura Danzo. I am the one who protects the great tree of Konoha beneath the ground. I am the one that shall lead Konoha into the greatest days the village has ever known. I am the one who shall become the Hokage and bring every nation into the greatness that is this village that the Shadaime and Nadaime created. I will not lose. On my honor, on my pride, on my being as a shinobi. I will not let this boy do as he pleases. Danzo exclaimed to himself. Fine. In that case, he'd use another alternative. Naruto paused as Danzo suddenly vanished in a burst of speed. He appeared behind the blonde, a kunai in his hand. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki turned around and blocked the attack. Really? Danzo-kun. You should know by now that doesn't. Naruto widened his eyes when he felt his senses leave him. He stared into the eye of the Mangekyo Sharingan. Soon, his blue eyes turned red. Danzo's lips curved upwards. He could see the fear in the young man's eyes. Hell, he could read his thoughts at the moment. He actually has. Naruto didn't get to finish his thought before he dropped to his knees and fell to the ground, unconscious. His technique fell from the root members and everyone stood up. They quickly subdued Naruto while Danzo clenched his eye. He groaned as blood fell from his right socket. Danzo-sama, are you alright? Someone asked. The old warhawk panted. I'm fine. Prepare the boy for conditioning. I want all the information in his head and I want him trained immediately. His prowess was undeniable. I will meet with you soon. We'll begin planting in fake memories for him. All of you here will be working with him. Take him away, he exclaimed. Hi, they said as they vanished away from the area. Danzo gasped heavily and fell to his knees. After some time, he managed to compose himself. Finally, he had attained the Kyuubi Jinchuriki into his forces. Despite the expenditure of 3 Sharingan, this was a definite worth. Unfortunately, the boy was already slated for a team, but by the time the night was over, he'd be one of the most powerful forces the old warhawk had en route. Soon, years passed. Under his tutelage, Uzumaki Naruto became one of the most devastating and loyal members of his division. By his hand, he'd brought down Kurigakure, and he'd been hailed as a hero for crushing Iwagakure in the Fourth Great Shinobi War. His power was so great that Hiruzen could only congratulate Danzo begrudgingly for turning Naruto into a prime shinobi. Even more than that, Naruto did everything for Danzo. No matter who it was, he assassinated everyone that the old council member wanted without remorse. As a test, Danzo had even told Naruto to kill the ramen shop owners. The blonde presented their heads to him a half-hour later. It wasn't only that, Danzo had picked the blonde's mind clean and he learned something amazing. Not only was this the only elemental nations, but it was also an imperfect world. The very concepts and laws of chakra had changed and this Naruto was way more powerful than he'd thought before. When he asked the blonde who he saw, he was nearly stunned by the response. I am Emperor Uzumaki Naruto, first of his name. Heir to the Senju and Uzumaki clans. Son of Senju Minato and Uzumaki Kushina. I am the unifier of the elemental nations into the United Nations of Elements. I am the sage of pure chakra and the host of the 9th chakra god, Kyuubi, he replied. So this wasn't a Naruto from this world. He was a Naruto from another world, and with this knowledge, Danzo wasted no time in getting the Kyuubi Jinchuriki to teach all the root forces pure chakra. Unfortunately, it seemed he couldn't because even the earth itself contained impure chakra. So that led the wizened old man to researching these things. He spoke with Orochimaru about this research, and with such time it wasn't long before not just root, but all of Konoha was learning of pure chakra. Its power was phenomenal. The chakra they'd used before just couldn't compare to it. With this power, there came the Fifth Great Shinobi War. Konoha invaded every other village. All minor nations, countries, and the last three great nations had no chance. Konoha was stronger, faster, more powerful. It was everything Danzo dreamed of. Because of his accomplishments, Hiruzen nominated Danzo for the Godime Hokage position, and no one refuted it. The Fire Daimyo, from years of blackmail and careful planning, was not but a figurehead to agree with every one of Danzo's policies. The years passed more and more as Danzo leaned back in his chair, reviewing his life. Who would have thought that just defeating the Kyuubi Jinchuriki would have yielded such benefits? With the blonde's might, and with his leadership, Konoha had become the supreme power over the entire world. There were no 5 great nations. There was only one, Konoha. The other 8 Jinchuriki had joined the 9th as his personal bodyguards. Do you now see, Nadime-sama? I should have been the Sandaime Hokage. Not Hiruzen. Konoha has become the most powerful nation in the whole world. Even the Akatsuki have been subdued. Uchiha Sasuke and Uchiha Itachi, both are beneath my will. All our enemies have been crushed. Not even Orochimaru could best Naruto. Danzo thought with a smile as he touched his head. Stand, he suddenly said. Soon, 9 members appeared before him. Each of them in dark cloaks. Q. Come, he said. Naruto stood up and moved forward until he was in front of Danzo. The Godime Hokage took off his head. Give me your mask, he said. Naruto took off his Anbu root mask and handed it to his Hokage without a word. You've served me well. You've operated in the shadows, the very roots of the great tree, but now it is time that you shall water the roots and spread them further. From this day forward, you shall be the head of the root division. All root operatives shall take their orders from you now. Work for the good of Konoha, work for the good of your Hokage, and always remember where your true loyalties lie, Danzo said while Naruto bowed. Danzo smirked before he returned to his seat. Suddenly, he felt something wrong. He turned around, but he just saw Naruto and the other 8 Jinchuriki still bowing. Perhaps I've been working too hard, he thought before he sat back in the Hokage seat. Disperse, Naruto said, and the 8 Jinchuriki vanished away. The blonde offered one more bow before he left as well, but Danzo would never forget the smile on the agent's face before he disappeared. However, he didn't focus on it too much. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. So much work finally accomplished. Finally, Shimura Danzo was not only the Hokage of Konoha, but of the whole world. Over 60 root operatives stood without a word as Danzo knelt on the ground, a wide smile on his face while a young Naruto had his hand over his head. Enjoy your dream, Shimura Danzo, for you shall never leave it until you die, Naruto thought with a grin. All those Sharingan, and the man couldn't even break out of a relatively simple genjutsu. It seemed he had a lot of work to do. Now then, I think I'll help myself to some much needed information, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki thought as his hand turned white with chakra. He closed his eyes and ran through all of the old elder's memories. His lips curved upwards when he saw the Shadaime and Nadaime Hokage. He also saw something interesting. So Namikaze Minato, this Naruto's father, isn't the same as mine. He's not the son of Senju Tsunade. Instead, he was an orphan. What is with blonde men liking redheads? Then again, maybe I can't talk, he chuckled to himself. Once all the memories were taken, Naruto withdrew his hand and turned back to the remaining root members. Any complaints? He asked. No, Naruto-sama, they all exclaimed. They all had heard Shimura Danzo many times state to them that his word was law. They were to follow any and all orders from his mouth. So, they all heard, without a doubt, their leader hand control of root over to Uzumaki Naruto. All orders were to be taken from him. Uzumaki Naruto's word was law, and not even Danzo could revoke such a status. Good, Then we'll start working tomorrow when I get back from my little training exercise. All of you head to your rooms. You're not Konoha shinobi anymore. You are my warriors, the army of Uzumaki Naruto. You're more than Konoha. We are not the root that protects the great tree. You are the root that expands beneath the very world. Without it, no nation has substance. You're dismissed, he said, and the root operatives vanished as their presence was not needed. Meanwhile, Naruto turned back to Danzo. Now, what do I do with you? He thought before he smirked. Alright, Danzo-kun, you like to rewrite memories, then allow Naruto to give you some new memories of your own. The old man still had his use after all. Summoning for someone to get the incapacitated man, Naruto returned home. As he sat on his bed, he yawned. It was later than he'd expected. His clone was already asleep. He dispelled it and soon all the exhaustion hit him. How could people order so much ramen? Well, I guess it's nothing compared to the numerous paperwork I had to deal with, he thought as he sat on his bed. He changed his clothes and soon, his head fell into his pillow. He'd work on sorting all these memories tomorrow. Right now, he was tired. Unknown to Naruto, a pair of eyes were upon him. They narrowed before they vanished with the wind. Morning came a little too quickly for Naruto's liking, but such was life. As he opened his eyes, he noticed he wasn't alone. He noticed a young girl in her Anbu root attire kneeling before him. She seemed to be 1 or 2 years younger than him. He scratched his head. Who are you? He asked. I have no name. Naruto-sama, she replied. He looked at the time. It was almost time for him to meet with his team. Only 4 hours of sleep. Good thing he'd already been used to nights like this. The young man had to admit, having a young body had its perks. Everyone's got a name. Should I call you nothing? He asked. She bowed lower. If that is your will, Naruto-sama, she answered. Great. Of all the things he needed, drones were not one of them. That's one thing I'll have to work on removing from them all. It'll be even harder on most of them since they've been in this root organization for so long. Shimura-kun did quite a few detestable things to them, Naruto thought as he removed his covers and got out of bed. He sighed. Then what were you called before I took over? He asked. I was not assigned a codename before your presence, Naruto-sama. I was advised to come to you for my first orders. I was to receive them from Danzo today, she answered again. Naruto sucked his teeth. Remove your mask. Let me see your face, he ordered. The young blonde saw the girl remove her root mask without hesitation. She placed it on the ground and he quickly took notice of the pupil-less eyes. A hyuga. One with the cage bird seal. That type of jutsu was only used on enemy shinobi for information. It was outlawed before my time, he thought. The young girl stared back at him with neither a smile nor a frown. He noticed her long, brown hair and her olive skin. In a way, she looked more like a member of Kumo than a member of Konoha. You're cute, he said, more to himself than to her, but she merely stared back at him. It was almost like she didn't even hear the compliment at all. Stay there, he said. She nodded and he walked into his shower. He bathed himself and brushed his teeth. He then ate a light breakfast of cereal, milk, and buttered bread. Once that was done, he got dressed. Well, it's not my will to have you be without a name. Since you're smaller than me of all people, I'm gonna call you Small Blade. That'll be your codename. As for your real name, that'll be up to you, he said as he reached beneath his bed and pulled out about 5 columns of books. Here, read these whenever you want. Pick a name that you like and that'll be your name from now on. Now, follow me, he said as he led her to his dining room area. He then prepared her a breakfast as well. Eat and stay here if you'd like. You'll be my second in command, one I shall groom above all others. Understood? He asked. Small Blade nodded. Understood. Naruto-sama, she said. The young man grabbed his backpack filled with supplies. He doubted he would need it, especially given the skill level of this new world, but he'd rather not test out that theory. Once he left, Naruto quickly found his way to the third training ground area. The dew from the grass wet his feet, but he kept moving. In time, he saw his 2 teammates walking as well. Both of them looked utterly exhausted and miserable. Then again, the Uchiha always looked miserable from what Naruto could tell. Morning. Sakura yawned while the three gathered. You two didn't eat, did you? Naruto asked with folded arms. They both glanced at him. Of course not. Kakashi-sensei told us not to, you idiot. Don't tell me you ate. She replied before she shivered when the blonde casted a harsh glare on her. The pink-haired girl quickly took a step back out of fear. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki shook his head and sighed. And if Kakashi-sensei told you that to take the survival course you had to cut off your arm, would you? He asked before he turned around and leaned against the fence. Sasuke eyed Naruto for a moment. Sakura followed his gaze and shook her head. Don't be so concerned with him, Sasuke-kun. He doesn't know what he's talking about, she answered. He glared at her, but he didn't say anything. Ever since yesterday, Sasuke had been trying to figure out what Naruto did that brought Sakura to her knees so easily. It was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Yet, why did that Dobi have it? What could Sasuke do to get something like that? As the trio waited for Kakashi, Naruto focused on working through more of Danzo's memories. He had to admit that one couldn't deny Danzo's passion to serve Konoha. The man did anything and everything to make Konoha the supreme power over the world. It'd be quite admirable if it weren't so disgustingly brutal. An hour or two passed. What started as dawn quickly became sunrise. Naruto shook his head when he saw Sakura and Sasuke get angrier and angrier. Of course, the latter seemed to be holding it in better than the former. That said, the rumbling stomachs didn't seem to help their case that much. Perhaps another 30 minutes or so passed before Hatake Kakashi appeared in front of his genin. Good morning, everyone. I trust we're all having a good morning. Kakashi asked. You're late, Sakura exclaimed. Sasuke glared at the man with hate. While he didn't want the annoying girl to shout, he could easily echo her sentiments. Naruto just sighed and stood to his feet. Kakashi chuckled. Right. Well, you see, a black cat crossed my path, so I had to take the long way around. Sorry about that. How about we get started then? He said as they all walked inside the training grounds. Hatake smiled as he reached into his bag and pulled out 3 bento boxes. He placed them on the seat of a black stone pillar. He then reached into his pouch and pulled out an alarm clock. He then placed it on one of 3 wooden pillars. You can't be serious, Naruto thought as he watched Kakashi smile. Here we go. The clock's been set for noon, he said before the trio watched him pull out 2 silver bells. Both jingled lovingly. Naruto's frown deepened. Your assignment is very simple. All you have to do is snatch these bells from me. If you can't get them by noon, then you'll all be tied to those posts without lunch and you'll be watching me eat my lunch. Sakura and Sasuke quickly deflated. So Naruto was right to eat. Now we just made it harder on ourselves, they both thought while the blonde shook his head. If they couldn't even see through something like that, then they deserved their own suffering. However, the pink-haired academy student raised her hand. Wait a minute. There's only 2 bells and there's 3 of us. Did you make a mistake? She asked. Kakashi chuckled. Well, while I do make mistakes, this isn't one of them. It's quite simple. By the end of this, one of you is going back to the academy. In order to not go back to the academy, you'll need to get one of these bells. Best of luck to you, Kakashi said, which made Sakura and Sasuke widen their eyes. No, I will not go back to the academy. I will not get further and further away from him than now. Sasuke growled within his own thoughts. No, I can't be separated from Sasuke-kun. This is a trial of love. Sakura thought to herself. This is stupid. Sasuke and Sakura, even Kakashi, widened their eyes when they all saw Naruto pinch the bridge of his nose. Kami, he could deal with a lot. He dealt with the chakra of this world, it fascinated him honestly. He could deal with the differences between this world and his. However, how long was he going to have to suffer this stupid shit? This system was broken. Finally, Naruto sighed. He took off his headband. If that's the point of this test, Kakashi-sensei, then it's not needed. I'll go back to the academy. Actually, I'll just exit the program. In fact, I resign from Konoha in general. I'm leaving, the blonde said. This completely stunned everyone as Naruto stuffed his headband into his pocket. He'd have tossed it on the ground, but it was still Iruka's headband. He wasn't that heartless. What? Naruto, what are you? Sakura stuttered. True to form, Kakashi didn't panic as he watched Naruto grab his bag. Giving up already, Naruto. I thought you were the man that would become Hokage. I don't think the Hokage are those who give up. Come on, it's not that difficult a test, he replied. Naruto snorted. The goading aside, you're right. It is an easy test. In fact, it's so easy it makes me wonder how this village is considered one of the strongest elemental nations. Look, I think this works out for all of us. Kakashi can focus on 2 students. Sakura gets to stay with Sasuke. Sasuke gets more time training with a powerful Jonin, and I don't lose my mind, the young man replied as he headed towards the door. Sakura blinked. Huh, it's an easy test. Then why aren't you doing it? She asked. Naruto sighed. It's easy and therein lies the problem. Besides, this isn't a dig at any of you, but you'd only slow me down, the blue-eyed boy said. That was the truth and not for the reasons they probably thought. He had to find out why he was brought here and that would most likely lead him to places that those 3 couldn't go to. He didn't need their deaths on his mind. Sakura scoffed. What? We'll slow you down. In case you've forgotten, Naruto, you're the dead last of the academy. You had the worst scores compared to everyone else. If nothing else, you'd be slowing us down, especially Sasuke-kun. She fired back. While Sasuke wouldn't have said it that way, he couldn't deny Sakura's words. The fact that someone would say that he would slow Naruto down was the biggest insult he'd ever heard. He's more full of himself than the reports said. It makes sense given what Sakura told me yesterday. She said he spoke a word and she was forced to her knees where he then proceeded to humiliate her. I might have to speak with Hokage-sama about this. I don't know what Konoha will do if he doesn't become a shinobi, Kakashi thought to himself. And what should we do to prove that we won't slow you down? Kakashi asked. Naruto frowned. So this Jinchuriki status is definitely more important here than in my world. Probably no surprise why. The Biju, and by extension the Jinchuriki, were easily stronger than the Kage of their villages. It'd be a waste to not use them for their military purposes. Especially not one like mine that's had such a rough relationship with Konoha. Still, there are obvious ways to get what I need, he thought before he sighed. He then walked back to the ground. All right then. Let's have ourselves a little pre-survival course exercise bet. Let's not even kid ourselves with this exercise of yours. You wanted to emphasize teamwork between the genin. Fine, I can see the appeal in that, but there are times where no amount of teamwork will help you. Suffice to say, 1 jonin and 3 genin is way too inefficient. Convince me otherwise, he said as he grabbed the bells from Kakashi's waist. He then walked over to a tree and stabbed a kunai into it. He then placed the rope of the bells on it. Sasuke and Sakura looked at him like he was insane. Forget grabbing them. If you can even touch them, then I'll admit I'm wrong and I'll never bring up my thoughts again. Actually, better than that, assuming we pass I'll be everyone's pack mule for the rest of our time as a squad, he replied. Sasuke scowled. As against you. Don't make me laugh. You've never beaten me in any spar and you want to take on all of us. You must be even stupider than your grades in the academy reflected. He snarled out, but Naruto wasn't perturbed. He rolled his neck. And here I thought you'd enjoy kicking me out, Sasuke. If I was really that bad then you've got nothing to worry about Dadbao, he answered. The last loyal Uchiha frowned before he stepped forward. Fine, but when I beat you I better not hear your mouth for the rest of the week. He said. To be honest, Sasuke was irritated. He already had to worry about getting a bell from a jonin, then he had to play with Naruto's little temper tantrum. He just wanted to go home and train. Naruto. Just come to your senses. You won't beat Sasuke-kun. Sakura exclaimed. You should worry less about Sasuke and worry more about yourself, Sakura, Naruto returned, which made the girl gawk. Kakashi rubbed the back of his head. Ma, I suppose this has its purposes as well. All we have to do is just touch one. He asked. Naruto nodded. Kakashi sighed. Oh well, it was best to get things like this done quickly. The Jonin had heard of the blonde's penchant for trouble. So just because a few Chunin hadn't managed to catch him, he'd gotten a bit of a swelled head. The silver-haired man also heard that the boy managed to make even someone like Mizuki retreat. A pretty amazing feat for a failure of the academy. That said, Perhaps it was time to introduce them to the big leagues. The one-eyed Jonin quickly appeared behind Naruto. Sasuke and Sakura widened their eyes. He's so fast. I didn't even see him move. There's no way Naruto can stop him. That was the thought of both genin hopefuls. In a second, Kakashi would touch the bells and this farce would be over. That was what they believed. That was what should have happened in their heads. So why did they see Kakashi fly past them as he crashed through 1, 2, 3, 4 trees before rolling through the dirt for several feet? What just? Sakura shivered as she and Sasuke turned their heads to the destruction behind them. She turned back to see Naruto staring at them without remorse. She then felt that same feeling from back in the academy. She felt this fear for her life. Was she going to die? Meanwhile, Sasuke stared back at Naruto. The blonde's gaze promised pain. He just sent a Jonin flying. When did he get this powerful? The Uchiha thought before Naruto rolled his neck. We might have gone to the same academy, but we're not in the same class. If you think I'm wrong, then try and prove me wrong. This is a good time to properly gauge not only the level of an elite shinobi in this world, but also the genin, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki challenged. Sasuke frowned before he threw a kunai and a shuriken at Naruto. The blonde quickly grabbed both weapons and threw them back at the Uchiha. The black-haired boy cursed before he pushed Sakura out the way. The girl shrieked as she fell to the ground while the kunai and shuriken sailed past her. The prodigy of the academy frowned before he charged at Naruto. He threw a punch, but he gasped when the Kyuubi Jinchuriki effortlessly dodged it. Sasuke threw punch after punch, but he bore sight to the unwanted reality of his teammates moving out of his way. He spun on his left leg and swung his right leg for the whiskered blonde's face. Don't underestimate me, Sasuke shouted to himself before he noticed his target was gone. What? Where did he? Sasuke-kun, below you. The Uchiha looked down, but his momentum carried him too much. His back faced Naruto while the blonde snorted. Sasuke screamed as the Kyuubi Jinchuriki firmly planted his foot in his teammate's back. The raven-haired boy was then blasted away from Naruto as his body crashed into the water of the training ground pond. Sasuke-kun. Sakura screamed before she noticed Naruto looking at her neck. She quickly took out a kunai and held it in her hands. The whiskered blonde watched her hands and arms shake. You're too scared to hold a kunai and you wanted to be the spouse of a powerful shinobi clan heir. If the Sakura from my world saw you, she'd kill herself from the shame, Naruto said with a shake of his head while he leaned against the tree. Meanwhile, Kakashi groaned as he struggled to his feet. What was that? Was Naruto always that strong? There was no report of it in the academy. When I reached for the bell, he kicked me before I could even react. It really hurt too. I felt like I got kicked by Guy, the Jonin thought to himself. He groaned as he stood to his feet. He noticed the destruction and breathed hard through his mask. Could Naruto have hidden his strength this whole time? If he has, then, just how powerful is he? Could he be using the Kyuubi's chakra? I didn't feel any of it like 12 years ago, he said to himself as he leaned up. Kakashi gasped when he heard Sakura scream. He frowned. The Jonin quickly dashed back into the forest. He noticed Sakura on the ground, unconscious. Her kunai was in her hands. He saw Naruto leaning against the tree with the bells. Naruto, what did you do to her? Kakashi asked. Genjutsu, Kakashi-kun. A terrible thing if one doesn't recognize it. I'm sure you'd agree, he answered. Kakashi resisted the urge to sigh. Sakura got knocked out by a simple genjutsu. Just what was the academy teaching these students these days? Why are you doing this? Kakashi asked. Naruto chuckled. Tell me, Kakashi-kun, how many Jonin are enlisted in Konoha? Naruto asked. I can't tell you that, his sensei replied. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki rolled his eyes. Right, whatever. I'll give you a prediction, Kakashi-sensei. If you and Konoha don't stop this stupid three-man cell shit, the village will fall to ruin in 40 or 50 years, Naruto replied. Lighthearted and laid back though he was, Kakashi took threats very seriously. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki noticed the air around the Jonin had changed. What do you mean by that? Kakashi asked. Naruto shook his head. It's not just Konoha, Kakashi-sensei. Imagine the fall of shinobi society simply because of a broken 3 genin 1 Jonin system. Why do you think that would happen? Naruto asked. A broken system. What is he talking about? Kakashi thought while he tended to Sakura. Maybe the reason I was brought to this world of yours was to help you guys. Either way, we're still having a test, Kakashi-sensei. You're running out of time, Naruto replied. Suddenly, 5 shuriken flew out of the water. Kakashi watched the shuriken sail for the blonde. Yet, he stiffened when the shuriken clashed against Naruto's skin and fell to the ground. Sasuke then appeared behind him. Ha! The Uchiha hollered as he launched a kick for Naruto's face. The blonde quickly brought up an arm to block the strike. The Uchiha landed on the ground and fired a punch next. Naruto parried the strike and moved the Uchiha's fist to the side. He then spun his body and firmly kicked him in the side. Sasuke coughed up blood before he was sent away, crashing into the ground while Naruto's frown deepened. No. When did Naruto get stronger than me? What have I been doing this whole time? Have I gotten so weak that I can't even beat him? Sasuke groaned to himself. Kakashi watched Sakura and Sasuke. Both were down. The bruises on Sasuke's face weren't minor. Alright, Naruto, you've made your point. That's a new. Today must have been a day full of surprises for Kakashi because Naruto quickly sped through some hand signs. It seems you aren't taking this seriously. Kaden. Shiroinkyu no Jutsu, Fire Release. White Blaze Ball Technique. Naruto exclaimed while the Jonin widened his eye. Before he could stop Naruto, the blonde blew a stream of pure white fire at the rest of Team 7. He's serious. He can even use fire jutsu. There was no record of this. Kakashi thought before he grabbed Sakura and Sasuke. He then jumped away with them both as the flames crashed into the green trees, burning them down to cinders. The flames chased after Kakashi as he jumped across tree after tree. He cursed. With both Sasuke and Sakura in his arms, he couldn't cast a jutsu to counter Naruto's widespread attack. Thankfully, Kakashi's speed was enough and he managed to divert from the flames' path as they continued and exploded the grounds behind him. Kakashi dropped his 2 students and sighed. What was going on? Nothing like this had ever happened in the Jonin's entire career. This felt like a bad dream. This was not how Kakashi was expecting his day to go. After a moment, Sakura opened her eyes and groaned. Kakashi-sensei. What was I? Sasuke-kun, you're alright. Sakura said as she hugged the young boy who groaned in pain. Get off me. That hurts, you idiot. Sasuke exclaimed as he pushed Sakura away. The pin-haired girl's smile fell. As they tended to their wounds, the 3 noticed the charred trees and burning forest around them. Did Naruto do that? When could he do that? Kakashi-sensei, what's going on? Sakura asked. Unfortunately, Kakashi wasn't sure what answer he could give her. He didn't know himself. He had assumed they'd fight him, they'd lose, and hopefully they'd learn their lesson on teamwork. Now, that seemed to be flipped on its head. Now he, Sasuke, and Sakura were trying to learn teamwork against a former academy student. The Sandaime was definitely going to want to learn about this. I don't know what's going on, but clearly Naruto thinks we should be taking this seriously. That was a fire jutsu that could have killed us had it not been fast enough. Sasuke, Sakura, I want you both to stand clear of the battle. I'll take care of Naruto, Kakashi said. You want us to do nothing? Sasuke growled out before he groaned in pain. You both are quite skilled by academy standards, but it's clear Naruto's gone through something different from the 2 of you. He doesn't seem to be under anyone's control and his chakras not being disrupted. This is the real Naruto. Suffice to say, neither of you can beat him, he answered. Sakura and Sasuke were broken by this thought. The Uchiha seethed with rage. He couldn't beat Naruto. He couldn't beat the dead last of the academy. Was this some kind of sick joke? Even Sakura couldn't believe it. Naruto was stronger than Sasuke. That was impossible. Unfortunately, though both didn't know it, it was truly possible. Kakashi touched his headband. Was he going to have to use his Sharingan for this? He really didn't want to. To be forced to use his Sharingan for a genin. How could he live it down if his coworkers found out? Sakura, I want you to go get the Hokage. He's gonna want to learn about this. Sasuke, despite the severity of this exercise, it's still a simple test. We just have to touch the bells. While Naruto and I are fighting, I'll try and lead him away. I can at least block him from you touching the bells. When you see an opportunity, use it, Kakashi said. It was rude to admit, but he already knew that if Sakura was with them, they most likely wouldn't be able to do this. She'd already proven to fall to a simple genjutsu. If she got captured, Kakashi didn't want to think about the repercussions. Right, Sakura said, and she ran off. TCH, fine, Sasuke grumbled. Meanwhile, Naruto sighed. So Kakashi was able to outrun that. While the force behind the blast wasn't anything too extreme, it's still quite a feat despite the circumstances. His chakra output was quite substantial. However, that's what's considered exceptional. I'll have to think over those variables when teaching the root shinobi, Naruto said to himself before he noticed Sakura's signature leaving the area. His lips curved upwards. As expected of Hitaki Kakashi, he seemed to already be getting the idea. If he had to guess, she was going to get the Hokage. Good, just like Naruto wanted. That said, with her speed, it'd take quite a while. He turned his head and he noticed Kakashi come out of the woods. That was dangerous, Naruto. You could have killed Sasuke and Sakura, he replied. Then you should blame the inefficiency of the academy. If that was all it took to kill them, then you should be grateful it was that and not them being captured and interrogated. I imagine there are many nations that would enjoy breeding the Uchiha until he drops dead, Naruto replied. Kakashi frowned. What would you have the academy do? He asked. Naruto's lips curved upwards. I believe that's on you to figure out, he answered as he took out a kunai. Kakashi did the same. The two quickly charged at each other and the battlefield quickly became a flurry of punches and kicks. Kakashi and Naruto danced around each other, their kunai constantly clashing and clanging together. The Jonin attempted to grab at the bells sometimes, but the blonde's strength was not to be underestimated. Their kunai clashed again, the metal grinding against each other as their steps dug into the ground. Where is this strength coming from? My arm's shaking, Kakashi thought as he grabbed Naruto's arm and tried to subdue him, but the blonde opened his grabbed hand, which revealed a smoke bomb. The pill exploded, masking the vision of both. Despite the lack of vision, Naruto and Kakashi clashed even harder. Kakashi grunted as he backed out of the smoke. He clutched his stomach and panted while Naruto appeared. The side of his face was swollen from a punch. He spat out some blood and smirked. Well, at least the people in this world could punch well. Kakashi threw 3 kunai that Naruto blocked. The Jonin charged at the blonde and raised a kick over his head. Pulling his arms up, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki blocked the strike, but as expected of an experienced Jonin. There was much weight behind Kakashi's blow. However, Naruto brushed him off and pulled back his fist. He then slammed into his Jonin sensei's stomach. Unfortunately, the blow didn't allow for much because a log appeared in the older man's place. The log quickly broke into pieces from the young man's blow before he found himself alone in the fields again. He chuckled. He then touched the ground. Doden. Sakai no Koyo, Earth Release. World Uplifting, he said. Instantly, the ground started to shake. The earth erupted with massive pillars of underground rock and stone. As Naruto expected, he saw Kakashi on top of one of them. Earth Release 2. This kid, Kakashi thought as the pillars got even higher and higher. He tried to keep his balance by applying chakra to one of them before they crumbled into pieces. The Jonin fell through the air before he landed on one of the slabs and jumped away as the ground exploded from multiple falling stones. Alright, Naruto. I think I've bought what you're selling at least a little bit. I'll get serious. Don't regret this, Kakashi said as he appeared in front of Naruto, his headband lifted from the side of his face. The 3 Tomo Sharingan swirled in left eye. Naruto's lips curved upwards. Finally, now a real test of theory could begin. Tsukuyomi swallowed her fear as Kami watched on her mirror the actions that were happening. She watched Kakashi face Naruto while the blonde grinned. The goddess of the moon felt a piece of sweat fall down the side of her face before her mother's beautiful hair suddenly burned with righteous white fire. Her hair started moving in odd ways before she stared at her daughter. The black-haired woman suddenly chuckled nervously. I can fix this. Dear daughter, I have many things to do. I have many worlds to maintain. As such, I understand that sometimes things diverge in ways we don't always see. I understand, Tsukuyomi. I could not perform my duties if I didn't have a lot of patience. So I shall allow you 2 human minutes to tell me how you plan to fix this. Kami exclaimed, her body blasting with divine power that made the goddess of the moon tremble. This was bad. This was very bad. Tsukuyomi had actually been trying to figure out that very question when she saw Naruto challenge Kakashi and the rest of Team 7. There was absolutely no way her mother wasn't going to see something like that. She had a perfect view of every Naruto's destiny, future, and circumstances. She was the ruler of all life after all, but, now she couldn't see this Naruto's anything. He was a being who should have already died, but replaced a new one. He was an anomaly, one that neither Kami nor Yami had ever seen before in the millions of years that they'd done this. Mother, please just let me explain, Tsukuyomi pleaded before she was quickly forced to her knees from the sheer volume of her mother's power. Tsukuyomi, at this point, I don't care. You said you could fix this, then you will. Do you know why I value Naruto-kun so highly? He is the one being above all that Yami and I have found perfect compatibility with. I have scoured far and wide for anyone similar. Some have come close, but none to such an extent as him. He is such an abnormal creation that there's a reason Yami and I can't fully have him for ourselves. His presence is the most perfect form of balance and imbalance. What has happened could break the entire universe to pieces. You're just lucky Yami hasn't heard about this yet. If you don't fix this, I'll make the endless void look like a vacation spot. Kami shouted while Tsukuyomi bowed. Why yes, mother. I shall do as you will, the goddess of the moon said while her white-haired mother nodded. Good. And just to make sure that you don't mess this up, you'll be going down there, Kami said. Huh. Before Tsukuyomi could even react, she found herself enveloped in a large white light. Mother. No. No please. I can fix this, I swear. Don't do this. Tsukuyomi pleaded while Kami chuckled. Stop being so overdramatic. Besides, you can consider this your punishment. Trust me, I could think of far worse to do to you. Enjoy your journey, Tsukuyomi. Prove yourself and I shall ascend you back to where you belong, the glowing, beautiful woman said with a pleasant smile. Mother. Tsukuyomi screamed as the light fully enveloped her. Kami watched as her daughter vanished in front of her eyes before she leaned back into her chair. Sigh. Sometimes she wished someone would take this job from her. She hoped everything turned out easy. She continued to watch Naruto combat Kakashi during this simple bell test. Kakashi panted as he slid across the ground across from Naruto. How long had this battle gone on? 10 minutes. 30. An hour. When was the last time he'd been forced to this extent? He saw Naruto tend to his wounds and clean up the blood from his lips. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki then launched at him and swung his fist. When Kakashi dodged, he heard one of the trees behind him crash to the ground. He had seen the blonde coat his fist in wind chakra before he released the punch. The force of the wind chakra was dense enough to break through anything if it desired. I can't even find the time to allow Sasuke to touch the bells. I don't even know if he can, Kakashi thought to himself. He tried for a kick, but Naruto jumped over it. He then swung his own leg and aimed for Kakashi's face. However, the Jonin was much bigger and his arms were longer. He easily blocked the strike, but Naruto wasn't deterred. He maneuvered his body over and grabbed Kakashi's leg. You've got a lot to learn, Kakashi-kun, Naruto thought as he placed a Fuinjutsu seal on Kakashi's leg. However, he stilled when he felt the Jonin wrap his fingers around his foot. Go Sasuke! Kakashi exclaimed while Naruto raised an eyebrow when he saw the young Uchiha burst out of the trees and run to the bells. For a genin, his speed was rather impressive. That said, Sasuke ran and ran. The bells got closer and closer. The boy was so close he swore he touched them before he doubled over in pain. Kakashi gasped when he saw another Naruto with his knee buried in the Uchiha's stomach. Really? Kakashi-kun? That was the best you had? Kakashi frowned as he looked down at Naruto's smirk. The Naruto clone then kicked Sasuke away. The Uchiha crashed into a tree stump and slid to the ground. And you're clearly still underestimating me. The Jonin looked down at his student and he noticed a seal starting to spread around his leg. He even knows Fuinjutsu. What can't this kid do? Kakashi thought as his Sharingan already saw the chakra moving as the blonde held up a hand sign. Fuinjutsu. Fudo Seifuku, Sealing Jutsu. Immobile subjugation, Naruto called out and the seals quickly began to spread themselves over Kakashi's body. Before he could even try to counter the attack, his body froze. He fell to his knees while Naruto freed himself. He then walked over to the tree while the Naruto clone dispelled. Sasuke snarled at him and the blonde turned to him. I think you've got about 5 minutes left, Sasuke. If this is as good as you're gonna get, then you can forget about Itachi. In fact, you might as well forget about resurrecting your clan. I don't know any woman who'd have the children of such a weakling, Naruto said with a smirk. Sasuke scowled angrily and Kakashi cursed. Simple goading. It's a little mean, but very effective. Someone of Sasuke's temperament won't let that go, the older of the three thought. He sighed. He wished he could say it wouldn't happen, but he knew it would. He'd read all of their profiles. Aside from Naruto, Sakura and Sasuke were just as he assumed they were. Shut up. Don't you dare mention Itachi to me. Sasuke hollered as he jumped up and charged at Naruto with a kunai. Kakashi would have told the Uchiha to calm down, but even his speech was taken away. He couldn't move his body to even try and get rid of the technique. Sasuke roared as he swung the kunai left and right at Naruto while the whiskered boy moved his head out of the way. He danced out of the way of the Uchiha. When Sasuke kicked, Naruto matched the kick. The black-haired boy recoiled in pain. He thought he felt his leg break into pieces. Since when did Naruto kick so hard? If anyone were to ask Sasuke how he felt right now, then he'd say he felt absolutely furious. He felt so furious that he wanted to cry. What had he been training so hard for? Why had he worked so hard for so little? I punch and punch, but he blocks all of them. It's like he sees them before I even do. Sasuke thought as he swung against only for Naruto to weave out the way of his strike. The two clashed their kunai as sparks trailed from their blades. Does the truth hurt, Sasuke? Naruto asked. As he expected, the rage in the Uchiha's eyes flared. In fact, the blonde was a little surprised when he saw a flash of red in Sasuke's eyes. So he did activate the Sharingan after all. Interesting. It seems the theories of Sharingan activation are the same as my world. The member needs to be under some type of emotional stress. However, there seems to be something different with the optic nerves in his eyes. This'll require some looking into as well, Naruto thought to himself. Unfortunately for the Uchiha, that level of Sharingan wasn't going to help him very much. Additionally, his final guests were arriving. He could already feel Sakura returning with not only the Sandame, but also a few Anbu. Naruto chuckled. He already knew this little stunt of his would raise many questions. He had ranged consequences from him being imprisoned as an imposter to him being executed, since the Kyuubi might take over. That said, he'd long thought about this. Of course, he hadn't expected this bell test to be so abysmal. It did help hasten his plans. He supposed he had to give thanks for that. Well, time for the grand reveal Dadbao, Naruto thought to himself. Despite the knowledge that he'd be questioned, he had no concerns. When dealing with people who caught you, all one had to do was become too valuable to let go, too valuable to kill. Can you even do a single fire jutsu? It wouldn't even surprise me if you couldn't, Naruto snorted before he vanished in a burst of speed. Before Sasuke could even gasp, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki blasted his foot into the Uchiha's chin, launching him into the air. As Sasuke sailed through the air, he wiped some blood away from his lips. Fire jutsu. Oh, Sasuke would give you a damn fire jutsu. The Uchiha sped through his hand signs, which made Kakashi gasp. Those are the horse and tiger hand signs. A fire jutsu from a genin. It takes way too much chakra. It's impossible, Kakashi thought. He wanted to feel worried. No matter how much of a threat Naruto was, Kakashi didn't want to use jutsu. It just seemed a bit over the top. However, clearly Naruto had goaded Sasuke enough that he was willing to go that far. The worst part was that the blonde had sealed him. He couldn't move anything aside from blinking his eyes. Over there, Hokage-sama. Kakashi gasped as he heard Sakura's voice. Though he couldn't turn his head, he could feel Sakura's pants and he could feel the powerful chakra of the Hokage. He could also detect at least 3 Anbu agents not far off. Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu, fire release. Great fireball technique, Sasuke shouted. He placed 2 fingers to his lips and fired a large ball of fire. Kakashi, Sakura, and the Sandaime watched the Uchiha blow the flames towards the Uzumaki while Naruto chuckled. Not bad. The fire jutsu needed a little work, but quite powerful in its own right. The blonde sped through his hand signs before he clenched his fingers together. Mokuden. Goki Shinsei, would release. Great Tree Rebirth, Naruto announced. Kakashi, Sasuke, Sakura, Hiruzen, and even the Anbu watching felt many emotions move through them, but the most prominent of them all was utter shock. As Sasuke's fire jutsu moved towards Naruto, the ground beneath the blonde's feet cracked and crumbled. A large, thick piece of wood quickly sprouted from the ground. It broke from the ground and flew into the air. Almost instantly, branches with vibrant green leaves protected him. The fire jutsu clashed against the wood. Naruto can use the wood release of the Shidaime Hokage. That's impossible, Kakashi thought. Unknown to the Jonin, Hiruzen was having the same thoughts. He'd been surprised when Sakura came bursting into his door all but begging him to come to the training grounds. At first, he'd been worried that Kakashi went too far regarding Sasuke and Naruto, but it turned out to be the opposite. Naruto challenged Sakura, Sasuke, and Kakashi to get the bells from him. Sarutobi didn't see the concern until Sakura told him that he'd blasted one of Konoha's most powerful Jonin through 3 trees. Hell, he thought it was a joke meant to just get him out of the office. Unfortunately, Sakura seemed absolutely terrified, especially when she told him Naruto burned a big portion of the forest with a mighty fire jutsu. So many questions and so little answers. Since when did Naruto know fire jutsu? Was this the power of the Kyuubi potentially taking over? Ever since the incident with the Forbidden Scroll, Naruto had been a little weird recently. It was only now that Hiruzen even wondered if this Naruto in front of him even was Naruto at all. The flames of Sasuke jutsu slowly started to dispel as he landed on the ground. Then everyone gasped when they heard the alarm clock go off. Naruto noticed it and smiled. Looks like I win, Kakashi-sensei, he said as he stepped from around the tree he'd created. Sasuke stared at the tree in shock before he and the others noticed Naruto take the bells off the kunai. He tossed them on the Jonin's lap. The blonde then touched Kakashi's shoulder and unsealed his movements. The silver-haired man fell forward and panted. He touched his face. He was sweating. He was actually sweating. Did a genin just actually make him sweat? At this moment, Naruto took notice of the Sandaime and Sakura. Everyone was equally stunned into silence by what he'd done. At this point, Naruto didn't even bother putting up an illusion. It would only make this whole thing more complicated. Naruto stood in front of Sarutobi. Hello, Hokage-sama, he answered. His clear blue eyes stared at his Hokage. The aged man stared at the young boy with absolutely no amount of mirth in his eyes. Naruto-kun, Hiruzen replied punctually. Sakura quickly ran to help Sasuke. Sasuke-kun, are you alright? She asked, but the Uchiha quickly pushed her out of the way. I'm fine. Get off me, he exclaimed angrily while Kakashi caught his breath. Sakura tried to offer him an apology, but he didn't hear her. All of his attention had been focused on Naruto and the most powerful ninja in the entire village. The two were just staring at each other. What is this pressure? I can't even breathe. It feels like I'm going insane, Sasuke thought. A pat on his shoulder moved his thoughts and he noticed Kakashi steadying him. The three looked ragged as they watched the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and the Hokage stare at each other. Finally, Naruto held up his hands. No need for the glare, Gigi. I'll go with you and I'll answer any questions you wish, he answered. The Sandaime nodded. Good. You make this less hard for me, Naruto-kun. Come, Hiruzen said as the 3 Anbu came down from the trees and surrounded the blonde. He looked at them all and chuckled. Though he expected this, he could already tell this was going to be a long day. He wondered how Small Blade was doing. Naruto glanced back at his teammates and waved them off. Enjoy your lunch, he said as he was led away from the training ground. The 3 looked at each other before they surveyed the destroyed fields. The entire walk towards the Hokage mansion, no one said a word to Naruto. Of course, he didn't say anything to anyone either. He'd been well versed in the politics of silence and suggestive thought. He'd allow the Hokage to come to his own decisions. Surprisingly, Naruto found himself not taken to the Hokage mansion. Instead, he was taken to the intelligence administration. When they stepped through the front door, the clerk gasped and stood to their feet. Hokage-sama, how may I help you? The clerk asked, saluting. Their eyes glanced at Naruto, who waved, for a moment before turning back to Hiruzen. Thank you. Summon Morino Ibiki, Yamanaka Inoichi, and Nara Shikaku. I wish for a room to be set up immediately, Sarutobi said. The clerk agreed and they quickly ran off. Not even 5 minutes later, and Naruto was being led down a few flights of stairs. All around him was a table, his chair, another chair, and stone walls. After a moment, his arms were chained to the table and his legs were chained to his chair. There was also a large one-way see-through window to his left. Guess who could see through which part of the window? Hint, it wasn't him. The blonde tested the iron for a moment. Chakra draining seals. Must have been made for people like me. Quite fascinating actually, Dadbeo. I should study these when I get the chance. There's probably a correlation between the levels of impure chakra and the strength of the seals to contain them. I'm also getting hungry, Dadbeo. On the other side of the mirror, Hiruzen observed Naruto. As far as he knew, the blonde was doing what Naruto would do. Yes, that sounded weird to say to him as well. The young man absently kicked his legs or tapped the table with his head in his other hand. Hiruzen didn't wish to appear soft, but he actually felt like he'd just jailed a young man rather close to his heart. It wasn't a great feeling. The door to his left opened. The Hokage noticed 3 tall men, one with a bandana, another with pale blonde hair, and the last with pineapple-shaped hair, come through the door. 2 of them wore dark green shinobi flak jackets and the other wore a gray shirt and pants with a black trench coat. You called for us, Hokage-sama. The one named Inoichi asked. The 3 of them quickly noticed the Anbu and the one in the room. The aged Kage slowly nodded. Indeed. Thank you for coming to me despite your busy schedules. As you can see, we have Naruto-kun chained to a table, Hiruzen said. The one named Ibiki frowned. So what trouble did he get himself into this time? He asked with folded arms. Yeah, he's a troublemaker all right. First the Forbidden Scroll and now this. I'm inclined to agree with Ibiki. Why are we here? Shikaku asked. He hoped he didn't come off as rude. He had been eagerly for Nara, waiting to hear that his son had passed the survival test. It was the same for Inoichi. Hiruzen exhaled and looked at Naruto. Naruto-kun had his survival test half an hour ago, he said, which got their attention. And? Ibiki asked. Sarutobi turned to them. From what his female teammate, Sakura, told me. Naruto said the test was stupid. I'm told he did this after Kakashi tried to perform the twin bell test. He then said he gave up. He didn't give up going to the academy. He didn't give up becoming a Konoha shinobi. He gave up becoming affiliated with Konoha at all, Kakashi replied, which got shocks from the 3 men and the Anbu in the room. That is distressing, Inoichi said. Sarutobi agreed, but he continued. Kakashi insisted that Naruto still try. So, Naruto decided to do a different test. After some words, he challenged Kakashi, Sasuke, and Sakura to simply touch the bells and he'd fail the test, the Sandaime said this time. Shikaku tried to not laugh. Well, he's good for a laugh if not much else, the Nara head said, but Inoichi and Ibiki noticed the uncertain look in the old man's eyes. I take it something went wrong. It sounds insane enough that a boy, not even a genin yet, would challenge not only one of the most talented jonin in Konoha, but also the best academy student of the year, Uchiha Sasuke. What happened? Inoichi asked. Sarutobi sighed, almost as if trying to believe this story himself. Well, Sakura said, Naruto kicked Kakashi through 3 trees. He also burned almost half the training ground forest down with a large fire jutsu, Hiruzen said. No one was quite sure what to say to that. The 3 looked at the Hokage like he was insane, but the look on his face made them all shiver. Hiruzen wished he wasn't, but he'd seen the battlefield. It was completely destroyed. Did he use the Kyuubi's chakra? Ibiki asked seriously, not that there were many occasions where he wasn't serious. That is what I'm trying to determine, but it doesn't seem like it. Also, that's not the most surprising part, he announced. Shikaku pinched the bridge of his nose. It's not. Well, what else is there? He asked. Of all the things he was expecting to hear, this was not one of them. He was already trying to figure out how the last of the academy overpowered one of the strongest Jonin. This sounded like something out of a damn novel. He subdued Kakashi with a Fuin seal. He must have done something to goad young Sasuke because the Uchiha released a fire jutsu. Then, Naruto-kun blocked it, with the wood release of the Shadaime Hokage, he answered. What? He used the wood release of Shadaime-sama? Inoichi asked. Had he heard that right? Hiruzen nodded. Indeed. I saw it when I entered the field myself, the Hokage replied. Just like Tenzo, Shikaku said with a frown. I dare say it was much better than even Tenzo, Sarutobi answered. The three Jonin looked at each other. They then looked at Naruto. The young man was staring at the ceiling, obviously bored out of his mind. So he could combat a Jonin, use Kaden Jutsu, Shadow Clones and Sealing Jutsu. He can also use Wood Jutsu. Shikaku asked. Hiruzen nodded to all of it. Are we even sure this is the same brat? Ibiki asked. That's what I've called you three here for. I'm here to figure that out. I'd like to. Sarutobi paused when he heard Naruto knocking on the table. They all looked to see the blonde staring at the mirror. So, I assume someone's talking back there. Hey, Gigi, if you're listening, can I get some food? I'm a little hungry after all that. You might wanna get something for yourself too. Something tells me we're gonna be here for a little while, Naruto claimed as he stared at the mirror. The four members looked at each other. Hiruzen turned to the Anbu. Find the nearest food stall. Order some lunch for everyone and something for Naruto-kun. Put it on my tab. So far, Naruto-kun's been sensible. If we can all remain calm here then I will acquiesce, Sarutobi said. Understood Hokage-sama, the agent said before they disappeared. 20 minutes passed before the lunches were delivered. Hiruzen stepped into the room. He handed Naruto his lunch which seemed to consist of a bowl of fried rice and a serving of fried fish. Itadakimasu, Naruto said before he ate his food. When Hiruzen felt that the pleasantries were out of the way, he cleared his throat. Well, I hope we can get down to business now. I'll be quite frank so excuse me. Who are you? Hiruzen asked with enough pressure to crack the walls. Ibiki, Inoichi, and Shikaku stiffened. Man, even with his age he is still that powerful. As expected of Hokage-sama. I don't think anyone can stand against it, the Yamanaka clan head thought before he stood shocked. The three Jonin looked at Naruto pleasantly eating his food as if the pressure in the room wasn't even there. Oh, Naruto knew it was there, but he felt a little bad for the Hokage. A pressure of that amount wouldn't do much to someone like him. Of course, he had to admire the attempt at intimidation. If this Hiruzen was back in his old world, this would have actually been a good lesson in helping Chunin shinobi resist intimidation tactics, but that was neither here nor there. Naruto pushed his food away and leaned his elbows on the table. Gigi, calm down. There's no need to be tense. I told you I'd answer all your questions and I will. I keep my word after all Dadbayo. Anyway, I am Naruto. However, I'm not your Naruto. Well, I am and I'm not. I'm the Naruto that this young boy will turn into, he replied. Sarutobi frowned. You're from the future, the Hokage stated while Naruto smiled. As expected of you, Gigi. That didn't take you long at all. Yeah, I'm Naruto from the future, 70 years into the future as a matter of fact, he lied. Shikaku, Ibiki and Inoichi looked at each other. 1,000 thoughts ran through their heads before they turned back to their Hokage. You don't actually expect me to believe that, do you? Hiruzen asked. Would you sooner believe I was from another world identical to this one? The blonde questioned. Hiruzen's gaze tightened. He was about to say something, but Naruto held up his hand. Listen, Gigi, I've already tampered with history enough. Hell, I'm already tampering with more than I wanted, but this was the only way I could get your attention without you thinking me insane, Naruto lied again. He'd gone over this scenario a few times while he waited for Kakashi to arrive at the training grounds. How can I believe you're from the future? Hiruzen asked. Naruto scratched his chin. Alright, my parents are Namikaze Minato and Uzumaki Kushina. My mother was the previous Kyuubi Jinchuriki before me. Before her, Uzumaki Mito was the first host, he stated. Despite this evidence, Hiruzen wasn't disturbed. Well, Okay, that was a lie. He was very disturbed, but he was doing his best not to let it show. He knows. Inoichi asked. Shikaku frowned. Well, he claims he's from the future. There's no reason to not believe that he wouldn't know about his parents eventually, the Jonin commander replied. The worst part was that he couldn't tell if he was talking out of his or not. Sarutobi sighed. His nerves had been shaken with those words. Indeed, Naruto was the son of the Yondaime Hokage and Uzumaki Kushina. The events of his birth were greatly covered up. Even now, Hiruzen had never forgotten about that masked Uchiha who had attacked the village. He'd spoken with Jiraiya many times in the hopes of finding the man, but all efforts produced no results. Anything else? He asked. Clever old bastard. He's aware some of that could just be done with a lot of research. Alright, if you want to be like that, Naruto thought before he grabbed a spoonful of rice and ate it. His lips curved upwards. Itachi's your agent in the Akatsuki and he wasn't the only person to kill the entire Uchiha clan, Naruto said. Now that got Hiruzen to break his face. He quickly held up his hand. Alright, that's enough. Please stop there, he said as tried to keep his composure. Only 5 people were supposed to know about that incident. Of course, this was also something that could be researched, but not the Akatsuki part. How could anyone know that? There were very few people who'd learned of such a thing. He could already feel the curious gazes of Ibiki, Inoichi, and Shikaku on him. This was a matter that truly needed to be handled delicately. Hiruzen cleared his throat. Alright, you at least make a convincing argument, Naruto-kun. Okay, assuming I believe you're from the future, when did this happen? He asked. Naruto nodded. Well, assuming things have transpired the same as before, then it was about a week before today. I woke up like this and realized the jutsu worked, and Gigi, I'll be frank. While it's good to see you again, I can see why Konoha ends up the way it does, Naruto said. Hiruzen frowned. What do you mean? He asked. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki sighed and leaned forward in his chair. Gigi, do you know why I had to come back to the past? To save not just Konoha, but all the elemental nations. I'll tell you this right now, these 3-man cells, these lessons on chakra, these types of jutsu, they are all inefficient. It's coming, Gigi, an enemy that the elemental nations aren't ready for, an enemy that none of us can beat unless we stand together right now. It is the end of the world. Naruto replied. Well, that's not ominous, Ibiki said while Inoichi and Shikaku shushed him. The Sandaime leaned forward. What do you mean the end of the world? He asked. Naruto closed his eyes and sighed. Gigi, there is a threat out there much stronger than Akatsuki, stronger than the Biju, stronger than anything the elemental nations are prepared for, he said with a great amount of dread in his voice that made Hiruzen, Inoichi, Shikaku and Ibiki feel the same. A threat to the elemental nations. What does he mean we're inefficient? These were policies and strategies implemented by the Nadaime Hokage that even the other nations adopted, Inoichi said while Shikaku placed a finger to his chin. I will admit the 3-man cell has some issues, but the benefits greatly outweigh the negatives. I feel we're missing something, Shikaku said. Let's be sure we pay attention then, Ibiki said. The others agreed while Hiruzen held up a hand for some time to think. Wait a moment, Naruto-kun. What is this threat? What is this threat that will destroy the elemental nations? He asked. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Tell me, Gigi, what do you know of the Sage of 6 Paths? Naruto asked. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow and thought for a moment. The Sage of 6 Paths. He was a godly figure that many believe the Senju and the Uchiha originated from. He is the one who gifted chakra to the world. It has been rumored that every Kekkei Genkai originated from him, the Sandaime said while Naruto slowly nodded. And where do you think the Sage of 6 Paths came from? He asked. Behind the glass, Shikaku frowned while Ibiki snorted. We're being attacked by rumored deity. Rumors go as high as the Sage of 6 Paths being the child of Kami. It's a story parents tell their children. The bald man said. This was ridiculous. The head of the Yamanaka clan thought differently. People also tell their children scary stories about the Kyuubi, Inoichi replied. Ibiki's frown deepened. Naruto leaned forward. You might think my point might be a little ridiculous, but Gigi, imagine an entire clan of the Sage of 6 Paths, and the Sage is amongst their weakest members, the blonde said. Why do I feel like they're talking about a fairy tale? Ibiki asked. Shikaku scratched his scalp. It might actually be like that. That's just how incredulous it seems. Never mind the Sage of Six Paths being real, but if we're talking about an entire clan of people like him, then I can see why he would say the elemental nations wouldn't survive, the Nara head said. Unfortunately, while this little fib might seem like nothing, it was actually very real. Naruto had faced them before. The people of the Sage of Six Paths. The United Nations of Elements had faced that before and barely survived. Naruto never forgot the power of the Otsutsuki clan, or what would be his world's version of that clan. If that clan existed in this world, then he could only hope both clans never met. He still remembered battling the matriarch and patriarch of the Otsutsuki clan, the proclaimed children of Kami. He'd fought them both for days. It had taken him and the full power of the Biju gods to take them down, and even then he couldn't kill them. He could only suppress them. Hiruzen stared into Naruto's eyes. He could tell the blonde was serious. The young man looked at him like a man who'd seen such terrible fates that befell his people. This all sounds very far-fetched, he said honestly. I'm sure it does, but you'd better believe me that unless all the nations put aside whatever grudges you've got and start improving, then the only thing waiting for us is a dead planet, Naruto answered. Ibiki, Inoichi, and Shikaku weren't quite sure what to think. This all sounded very surreal. Talks of the end of the world, the Sage of Six Paths, people just like him, just what was this turning into? While Konoha was talented, none of them were what someone would call god-like people. Could they combat such people? Would you give me a moment, Naruto-kun? Hiruzen asked. Sure, he answered as he picked through his now cold food. Hiruzen stood up and exited the room. He rejoined the three Jonin. What do you think? He asked. I see why he said we would need lunch. This is too much to process. If he's lying, then he's damn good at it. I haven't noticed anything out of line. If he is telling the truth, then may Kami have mercy on us, Inoichi said. It's a matter of if traveling to the past is even possible, Shikaku then said. I don't think we're gonna be able to come to terms with something like that so easily. He comes from a time in our future, supposedly. Who knows what they'll learn? All that matters is there is a potential threat that basically overwhelms the entire world. Inoichi, could you scan his memories? Ibiki asked. The Yamanaka clan head placed a finger to his chin. I could. He's been cooperative so far, but it's also a matter of, what do we do if he's right? Shikaku scratched his chin. That's an entire problem in and of itself. However, we should first confirm his story, the Jonin commander said. Meanwhile, Naruto thought over this plan. While the lie wasn't what he wanted to do, he found this to be a good time to actually fix most, or at least some, of Konoha's problems. If he was able to come to another world, then he couldn't say for sure that other enemies couldn't. Even now, he contemplated going back to his world, but he wondered if he even could. He still held the belief that sometimes, you just gotta let the new generation handle its own problems. The blonde noticed the door open. In came Yamanaka Inoichi and the Hokage. Naruto took note of the Jonin uniform. So he's a Jonin in this world. That's rather surprising, the host of the Kyuubi thought before he gave them his attention. Naruto-kun, this is Yamanaka Inoichi-kun. He's. Naruto quickly nodded. Yeah, the head of the Yamanaka clan. I remember him. He fought admirably for us. I'd give you a handshake, but, the young boy wiggled the chains. I seem to be chained down at the moment. Despite the situation, Inoichi chuckled before he bowed. We'll save the handshake for another time. I apologize, Naruto-san, but I think you know what I'm here for, he said. Naruto nodded and lowered his head, allowing the blonde Yamanaka to go into his head at his leisure. He wouldn't get anything that Naruto didn't want him to get anyway. I understand, but Gigi, Inoichi-san, I'm a little low on trust at the moment. I'd advise against you looking into your own future too much. It doesn't usually turn out well, he replied. Noted, Naruto-san. Thank you, Inoichi said before he laid his hand on his head. He then coated his hand in chakra. For the next 30 minutes, Naruto allowed Inoichi to enter his mind, and to say that the Yamanaka was stunned was an understatement. He'd seen the fights that happened and he'd seen the destruction. Numerous human corpses laid together in hundreds of roads as combined shinobi fought against people with skin as pale as gray snow. The things Inoichi had seen, he wondered if he was looking at the future or if he was looking at a movie. Is this even ninjutsu? Inoichi thought as he saw explosions crush mountains. He watched Naruto perform vast wood release techniques. He saw things he thought he'd never see in his lifetime. However, as Naruto explained, the battle was indeed getting harder. The elemental nations were overrun and destroyed one after the other. Unfortunately for Inoichi, Naruto was already a step ahead of him. The blonde had placed several measures that retold the events of his memories in the battle. What the Yamanaka was seeing was perhaps a soft version of the war on Naruto's original world. He watched how many people were killed and how Shinobi and Kunoichi, his daughter included, worked hard to protect the whole world. By the time he was done, Inoichi removed his head from Naruto's head. He staggered back for a moment and placed his hands on the table. "Let's give Inoichi-kun a moment," Hiruzen said as he led him outside. After 5 minutes of rest, Inoichi sighed. "I don't know if it's the future or not, but if it is then, I don't think even Kami can help us." Those were indeed his memories, he said. Shikaku, Ibiki, and Hiruzen stood concerned. "This is troubling," the first of the three said. "Yes, but even more than that, the chakra they used. It was unlike any type of chakra I'd ever seen. As you all know, the color of chakra depends on the individual, but, no matter who I looked at, all I could see was some type of white chakra. I'd never seen anything like it. From his memories, it's called pure chakra," Inoichi said. The head interrogator of the T&I department raised an eyebrow. "Pure chakra? What the hell is that supposed to be?" he asked. "Based on observation, it's supposed to be chakra with no impurities, taken and absorbed from the earth itself. Apparently, Naruto-san discovered it and began teaching it to the rest of the nations. I think if he had more time the battle might have turned out differently," the mind reader explained. "I'm still a little skeptical of this time travel story, but I won't deny Inoichi's expertise. If he says those are Naruto-san's experiences, then I believe him. The only problem is we don't know what we're looking for, or who our enemy is. Even Naruto said he doesn't remember when they came to challenge us. If that's the case, then it could be that they're already out there. For now, I recommend working with him and keeping him under surveillance. I would like to know what's inefficient about our methods." "It is your call, Hokage-sama," Shikaku said. "Indeed. However, we must also remember that he's not a shinobi just yet. Additionally, he did beat Kakashi, Sasuke-kun, and young Sakura. I'm told it was under the condition that he'd go back to the academy or quit being a shinobi if he lost. It seemed this was to get our attention," Hiruzen said. "Well, it definitely worked. But there is also a question of what to do with him. Kakashi, Sasuke, and Sakura saw him perform the Mokuden of the Shadaime Hokage. That's going to spread quickly. Should we name him the heir of the Senju clan?" Ibiki asked. "Perhaps it's not impossible that Naruto-kun would have such an ability. The Uzumaki clan, the clan of his mother, were distant relatives of the Senju clan. Uzumaki Mito was Hashirama-sama's wife. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the Senju genes passed to him," Hiruzen stated. "But none of the Shadaime's children produced Mokuden," Inoichi countered. "Look, we can only speculate, and that's not going to get us anywhere. Something like that can wait for another time. However, we'll ask for Naruto-san to not use the Mokuden until we have a measure in plan. I don't think we're ready to deal with the repercussions if the other nations learn about this. The Shadaime's power has been coveted for many years. I wouldn't put it past them to try and take it for themselves," Shikaku answered. "Well, he's from the future. I doubt they'd be able to right now," Ibiki said before Hiruzen sighed. "Alright, we'll discuss the prospects of Naruto-kun's Mokuden abilities later. For now, we will make one exception and ask for Kakashi to pass Team 7. We'll make sure Sasuke and Sakura do not spread word of Naruto-kun's abilities, and we'll say that we talked him out of leaving. We will also take measures to work around this problem facing the elemental nations. For now, I'll speak with the council regarding this matter. For now, I ask for everyone to treat this with the utmost secrecy." "Understood?" Hiruzen asked. "Understood, Hokage-sama," the three said while Hiruzen agreed. He then opened the door. Ibiki walked inside and uncuffed Naruto. The blonde sighed. He then rolled his arms and his legs. "You're free to go," Naruto-kun. Thank you for this information. I admit, it will be rather difficult dealing with a future version of you, but I don't know what we'd have done without you. That said, I hope you continue to understand that this is a delicate matter. Please, don't use the Mokuden if you don't need to. As you know, it's a very precious ability that's a part of Konoha's history. Also, please return to Team 7. It will be easier to make use of your unique talents if you're in the employ of Konoha, Sarutobi said before Naruto laughed. There's no need to convince me to stay, Gigi. I wasn't actually planning on leaving. Very well, I can abide by those conditions. If you trust these men, then I will as well. However, I hope to speak with all of you again before the week is over. We have more to discuss, he said. Hiruzen nodded. Indeed. I will arrange a time for us all to meet in a place where we will not be disturbed. We do have more things to discuss, the Hokage returned. Everyone agreed and Naruto shook the hands of Shikaku, Inoichi, and Ibiki. With that, Naruto was allowed to leave. He groaned as he stepped outside the intelligence division. Good. With this, I can maybe start investigating the reason for this world or why I'm here. I can also help them advance. There might not be anything to worry about, but it's better to be safe than sorry, he thought before he decided to head home. Honestly, he was tired of today. Implanting false memories to fool Inoichi was much harder than he thought. He'd have to spend some time correcting those later. With that, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki headed home. He already had to get up early and head to the root quarters and start training the shinobi down there. He had no idea how long he'd have to take to recondition those men and women for the tasks to hand to them. When Naruto opened the door to his apartment, he noticed Small Blade with a stack of books in front of her. When she noticed him, she quickly got up to greet him, but he held up a hand. No need. Go back to your reading, but when you're done with your book, I want you to send out a message to all root forces except for those deep in enemy territory. Tell them to come back to Konoha as quickly as possible, he ordered. Small Blade bowed. It shall be done, Naruto-sama, the young girl said before she continued reading while Naruto nodded. He then retired to his room and quickly created a clone. Go, he said. The clone nodded and concealed itself before it dashed off across the rooftops. With that taken care of, Naruto changed out of his clothes and sat on the floor. He then began the long, tiring process of regurgitating the notes and styles in his head. Meanwhile, the Naruto clone that the Kyuubi Jinchuriki just created headed into the root headquarters. Greetings, Naruto-sama, one of the agents said while the blonde nodded. I'm not staying here long. Small Blade will come here later. Listen to her orders as they come from me. Tell everyone that in the base, he said while the agent silently obeyed with a bow of their heads. Understood, they said as they watched the clone transform into the old leader, Shimura Danzo. Had the agent had the proper emotional training, they would have questioned the act. However, they kept their mouths shut. It wasn't their place to ask questions anyway. No one knows I'm the leader of Root. Not even the Hokage. I don't think he'd appreciate knowing a rumored disbanded faction has been overtaken. As far as everyone else is concerned, Danzo's still in charge. Might as well keep up the illusion, the disguised Danzo said while the agent looked at him. If you have a question, ask it. To ask is to learn. To learn is to improve. To improve is to question, he said before he patted the agent's shoulders. He left the agent to think on his words before he walked through the memorized halls until he came out to Danzo's public office lined with stacks of paper. Ah, right. He was a member of the council. He's now a public shinobi advisor. He's got paperwork to do. I might have to rethink some things. While that doesn't place me on the Konoha Council, there's still some influence to be had here. However, I'll have to be careful. Hiruzen and Danzo will know each other very well. This must be done delicately at least until I can deal with Danzo permanently, the blonde thought before he started looking through the documents lined up on his desk. When the former emperor looked at the details of the documents, he sighed. Truly, you're an old warhawk, Shimura Danzo. A patriot to a damn fault, Naruto thought as he read over some notes before there was a knock at his door. The door opened and an assistant came through. Oh, Danzo-sama, so you were in your office. I'm glad I knocked. Are you still not visitors? A feminine voice asked. He looked up and noticed a rather beautiful woman looking at him. Not today. Should anyone ask, then tell them that next week might prove more optimal. You're dismissed, he said. The assistant nodded and closed the door. Meanwhile, Naruto looked over the notes and documents presented to him. Interesting. Hiruzen, are you serious about this? One of the three council members, who sat around a small room, asked. The Sandame, his fingers intertwined together, quickly nodded. Yes, Homura. At least, Inoichi claims that the memories in Naruto-kun are indeed real. Not a single one he saw was fabricated, he replied to the other man in the room. The one named Homura frowned and scratched his chin. This is troubling. I had not thought time travel possible, but one does not know what progress the future makes. If this is true, then every nation falls before this terrible calamity. However, this is also a blessing in disguise. Hiruzen, you actually saw the boy using the Mokuden of the Senju clan. Another, Kaharu, asked. The Sandame tried to keep the smile off his face. It seemed that despite the danger, both council members were intrigued regarding the blonde's connection to the Senju clan. Even now, the influence of the Senju clan could be felt throughout every corner of Konoha's history. But how is it possible? Homura asked. Shadaime-sama's wife was an Uzumaki. It isn't impossible for the blood of the Senju to appear in the boy. This actually helps because he'll be able to control the Kyuubi even better. It was one of the reasons why Hashirama-sama was feared. His wood release could contain the Biju. It also wasn't artificial like with Tenzo. It must be a sign that the world is not ready for the Senju clan to die just yet. If he does have Senju blood, then it will be a comforting sign to have a Senju back in Konoha, Kaharu replied. Homura nodded. Indeed. It must be a stroke of fate that we would have a Senju, Uzumaki, and Uchiha all on one team. However, we will have to be careful. Many know of the war between the Senju and the Uchiha. Young Sasuke will learn about this, if he hasn't already, the man said. Hiruzen watched the two talk before he held up his hand. We shall decide such a thing later. Indeed, it is comforting to know that Shadaime-sama's ability still lives on. However, remember that it wasn't supposed to appear now. Naruto claims he discovered it when his life was on the brink of death fighting these invaders. Unfortunately, we don't have much information on them. Though Naruto-kun claims they just showed up one day, I don't believe this was done in a vacuum, he answered. You believe it was planned? It could even be happening right now. Kaharu asked. The Sandame nodded. Indeed. I will need to speak with Jiraiya on this. I might also have to stop showing leniency on Tsunade. If she doesn't return, then I shall transfer ownership of the Senju clan to Naruto-kun. That was a measure implemented by the Nadaime in the event that a clan heir or heiress wasn't capable of doing their duties for the good of the village, he replied. That will make Tsunade very upset, Homura answered. We have indulged her grief long enough, I believe. We have all experienced loss and must still step up when it comes to making sure others don't feel the same, Kaharu answered. Well, if this Naruto is from the future, then he's already got the external knowledge to operate this clan. That said, I am a bit hesitant since we have no true idea of his goals. Also, I'm against telling the other nations this just yet. It could spark another war in the grab for resources to combat this coming threat, the male council member said. Indeed. Naruto-kun also said our methods are inefficient, which is why we were ill-equipped to deal with this threat. I plan on asking him his thoughts on what he meant. I will also seek out a team to assist him. He talked of pure chakra, Hiruzen answered. Pure chakra. What is that? Kaharu asked. Even with his explanation, I'm not sure, but I know we'll have time to observe that. For now, I will contact our spies in the various villages. We'll tell them to keep an extra eye open for anything strange. I will also see if Itachi can give us any information on the Akatsuki. I have a feeling that whatever happens, it starts with them. Sarutobi answered. The other two council members agreed. With that, they continued to speak until the sun left the sky. It would be a long time before any of them was given time to go home. In his apartment, Naruto slept peacefully. The day had been very tiring on him as he planned his next moves on how he was to live in this world. Maybe he could focus on getting himself a better bed. When was the last time he slept in a bed like this? Then again, perhaps he should be thankful he had a bed at all. Within the deep realm of his mind, Naruto smiled as he looked over his empire. So much effort, so many wars, so many treaties all finally came together in a world of unprecedented peace. He'd worked hard for this. However, when he looked down, he noticed so many men and women with their families. Each of them laughed and chuckled plus they entered their homes. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki's smile fell. When he stared back at his luxurious chambers, he noticed that despite how big it was, he could never fill it. When he looked back outside, he frowned. Huh, where did everyone go? He thought as he noticed how many lights in his empire were out. Had everyone gone to bed? Possibly, but at the exact same time. Worried, Naruto jumped off his palace's window and landed on the ground. The lights were out. Everything seemed so quiet, almost eerily so. He knocked on some doors, but no one answered. He looked at a food store. There was no food on display. Not even the late-night stores were open. Suddenly, the blonde turned his head. He noticed something white turn around the corner. Confused, but curious and cautious, he grabbed a kunai and jumped to the rooftops. His eyes narrowed as he saw what looked like a white piece of clothing running through another corner. He ran after it, but he didn't do it from the ground. He jumped from rooftop to rooftop, following the white cloth. He ran and ran, but no matter how far he ran, he couldn't catch up enough to see what he was following. Hell, he was sure he wasn't even in his empire anymore. The forest of buildings had quickly turned into a forest of trees as he followed, but every tree trunk he ran across was one that didn't bring him any closer. He tried to use a jutsu to slow the figure down, but for some reason, he couldn't focus his chakra enough to cast it. Instead, he tried to throw shuriken and kunai at the target, but they danced out of the way like they weren't even there. He chased and chased and chased, until Naruto landed on the ground and he pushed through some trees. He noticed a lake. It was filled with crystal clear waters and vibrant green grass. At the edge of it stood a woman in a white dress. Her hair was the most beautiful piece of lavender black that he'd ever seen. Suddenly, his senses left him. Instead, his instincts as a man reduced the logical side of his brain to mush. He dropped his kunai. It was weird. Though he wanted to go close to the woman, to embrace her, and learn of her, he didn't advance. Indeed, his body screamed at him to go to her, but the sheer will within him held his nerve. His other instincts still urged caution. He'd battled and killed many beautiful female kunoichi that could turn him into a stuttering mess. No matter how he felt, he desired not for a pretty face to be his downfall. The woman turned around and looked at him. He stared into her eyes and they seemed to draw him in like a sea of stars. Her lips curved upwards. I can see why mother favors you so highly, Uzumaki Naruto, she said, her voice as sweet as honey and soft as silk. He didn't speak. His ears hung on her every word. Her smile widened. My name is Tsukuyomi. I am the goddess of the moon. I understand that all of this might be strange, but I'll need you to listen to me. The world is in grave dang. Hua! Tsukuyomi screamed as she tripped on her white dress and fell to the ground with a thud of her head. Naruto blinked. Ow. That hurt. I knew I shouldn't have made this damn dress so long. I haven't visited the mortal realm in over 16 eons. I forgot how hard it is to walk, Tsukuyomi thought as she rubbed her head. She looked up and noticed Naruto looking at her with an utterly confused expression. Just great. All right. I got this. The goddess of the moon said before she quickly jumped up. She cleared her throat. You didn't see that, she said while Naruto was pretty damn sure he did. If this was the self-proclaimed goddess of the moon, then clearly the criteria for godhood wasn't as extensive as many assumed. That said, it wasn't like he was a god. What did he know? While this situation was unorthodox, it at least provided some type of benefit. Naruto at least had control of himself now. His dignity wasn't all over the floor in trying to keep himself from turning into a caveman before this otherworldly beauty. Right, well, if we're done here, I'm gonna go wake up now, he said. Shocked, Tsukuyomi quickly asked for his attention. When she felt him trying to wake up, she grabbed a hold of his consciousness. I ask you to reconsider, Uzumaki Naruto. My slip up aside, I have not come here in a vacuum. You have found yourself in a world very similar to yours, have you not? She asked. With his attempt to leave dashed, Naruto turned back to the goddess with a frown. He looked around the environment and narrowed his eyes. I see. So that's why I'm so aware of myself despite my physical body being asleep. It's because you made me aware, he said while she nodded. It would not be very productive if you doubted this meeting ever happened, she returned, her voice soft. Naruto's mouth thinned, but he could see where she was coming from. Well, I suppose that's true. I wouldn't want to forget you falling down like that, he fired back. With all of her will, Tsukuyomi tried to not bury her head in her hands. She prayed that her sisters, Amaterasu and Sujin, and her brothers, Reijin, Fujin, and Kagutsuchi, didn't learn about this. She'd never live this down. She was sure her siblings were already laughing at her predicament as it was. Sensing her plight, Naruto cleared his throat and sighed. All right, thought I've researched the gods before, I've never directly found much evidence. However, clearly you know why I was here. Either you're someone on this world who entered my mind or, you really are a god. I'd lean to the latter because it's not easy to get in here if I don't allow it, he said. Not exactly the criteria I'd like to use to confirm my godhood, but I'll take it, Tsukuyomi thought to herself before she nodded. Thank you for at least hearing me out. I'll make it brief, you were called here to save the world. When the beautiful goddess words were spoken, Naruto didn't immediately dismiss the idea. He actually thought he was brought here to try and progress the world in case of threats. Clearly, they needed it. That said, he placed a finger to his chin. Save it from what? He asked. Tsukuyomi closed her eyes. Mother has grown concerned over the progression of the Otsutsuki clan. They've grown further than what she'd calculated. However, as part of the laws set up since the beginning of the ages, my mother and her sister are prohibited from directly influencing worlds aside from creation and destruction. The worlds destroyed are those where life is no longer sustainable, she said. Worlds? He asked. The goddess nodded. Indeed. There are many worlds, some similar to yours and others vastly different. You were selected to this world because, we hope that you'll be able to combat the Otsutsuki clan. From another world, they have been working hard, connecting with members from other worlds and growing their forces. It will not be long before they come to bring this world's Otsutsuki clan as part of their empire. If this world falls, then they will head to your original world's Otsutsuki clan, she said. Naruto frowned. He didn't need that spelled out for him. Just his world's Otsutsuki clan was enough. Was this woman really telling him that he had to stop a multitude of other Otsutsuki members? He didn't even think he could do that. Hell, this sounded just like the lie he told Hiruzen. That was actually happening. What kind of joke was this? Despite his concerns, Naruto inhaled and exhaled. I assume I can't get other Narutos to help me? He asked. We would like to prevent that. You see, every universe has a link to Mother and her sister. Otsutsuki strain the otherworldly jumping as much as it is. If you do so as well, it would be too much for Mother and Aunt. Every world would be destroyed, Tsukuyomi said. Unfortunately, Naruto couldn't tell if that was a lie or not. Hell, he couldn't tell if anything this woman said was a lie. Something within him made him believe her, but he couldn't tell if that was like some god-to-mortal relationship thing. Maybe as a goddess she held authority over mortals to make them believe her. Not exactly a fact, but definitely a hypothesis. Worried by his silence, Tsukuyomi asked for his attention. Please let your heart be at ease. Mother doesn't ask for the impossible. She asked for you specifically because of every Naruto. You were one of the very few to unite the world under one banner. We will also help you as much as possible. I have been called to assist you in your task. Also, should you succeed, you may have anything your heart desires if it is within our power, she said. She already knew he would agree. Once he agreed, he'd ask for his loving wives back. She already had a plan in her mind to speak with the Shinigami and her mother about the deal. Surely, neither would protest. Anything I desire? He asked. Mother is very fair to those that assist her in the preservation of all life that she has created. She has also seen your struggles. What do you wish for? Tsukuyomi asked. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki raised an eyebrow. He then looked all around him for a moment. His first thought was his wives. He missed them all very much. He loved them all. He remembered the journeys through hell they'd gone through with him. He'd like nothing more than to have them with him again. However, his lips curved upwards. Anything. No matter what it is. He asked. Tsukuyomi tried not to sigh. Were mortals always this skeptical? You have my word as the goddess of the moon. It shall be done. I swear upon the river of eternity, she said. Naruto nodded. Then I'll take your hand in marriage, he said. Tsukuyomi nodded. Very well. I'll reser. ECT, your, huh? The goddess of the moon asked. Did her immortal mind collapse? Did she hear that right? Was she hallucinating? Could gods hallucinate? What? I'm sorry. I didn't catch that, Tsukuyomi said while Naruto's smile widened. I'll ask for the goddess of the moon to become my wife, he said while the woman chuckled nervously. Soon, she forgot about her status and fell to her knees. That's what I thought you said. Might I ask why? She asked, not knowing whether to cry or not. Well, to be honest, I don't really believe your story, but I know something like that is possible because the Otsutsuki clan from my former home tried to do the same thing before I suppressed them. It all seems a little suspicious to me. Until I can ascertain if you're right or not, I'd like to make sure you don't go anywhere. Also, on the off chance that you are right, then I doubt your godly family will just leave you to die. They might be willing to help us out, he said. Despite her desire to wallow in the despair of her situation, Tsukuyomi had to admit that was indeed a good idea. She couldn't get married. She was only 20 billion years old. Hell, she was still a virgin. She'd never been with a man before. No way. Even if I did bring this to mother, there's no way she'd. Before Tsukuyomi could finish her thought, she and Naruto gasped when two rings of light appeared in front of them both. The goddess of the moon watched as one slipped onto her ring finger. Her face went pale as the other slipped onto Naruto's ring finger. No way. Mother, you can't be serious. You actually acknowledge this. I understand I messed up. But, is this going a little too? Before the black-haired woman could finish her statement, the light was gone and she was left alone as the rings vanished. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki blinked. What was that? He asked. The eternal rings. They bind two beings until the end of time, Tsukuyomi chuckled lifelessly as she stared at her ring finger. She was actually engaged to a mortal. Not only had she lost most of her godhood, but she was also engaged to the main part of her problems. She was engaged. The goddess of the moon was engaged. She was. Naruto raised an eyebrow when Tsukuyomi's eyes rolled into the back of her head. She fell back and her head banged against the ground. I said that as a test. I thought she might try some type of weird divine trick, but, based on her reaction, it seems to actually be the case. This certainly raised the stakes, Dadbayo. Naruto thought. His surroundings then seemed to darken and his consciousness slipped away. Naruto opened his eyes and yawned. His head hurt something fierce. That was a weird dream, he thought before he rolled over and looked at the time. He noticed it was around 6 in the morning. He grumbled, but he then leaned up and rubbed his head. Oh well, he was already awake. Might as well get some private training in. The blonde leaned up and shoved the covers off him. He then stilled when he heard someone moan next to him. He turned his head and despite the darkness, since the sun hadn't set yet, he could barely make out the form of a tall woman. Her hair was just as black like the woman in his dreams with a notable sheen to it. His eyes widened. He placed a hand over his mouth. Meanwhile, Tsukuyomi had been sleeping peacefully, wondering why her mother had decided now to torture her so. Now she was married to a mortal. Weren't god-mortal relationships forbidden? Never had Tsukuyomi heard of this happening. The worst of it was that she couldn't even contact her mother because her connection to the divine realm had been severed per her punishment. Well, at least she wouldn't be meeting her husband anytime soon. She'd settled in a temple far away from the elemental nations. That had been her home while she worked through the shock of not only having to help Naruto, but also being rejected from her home for her mistake. Why was this happening to her? She didn't even think she messed up that badly. Finally, the woman groaned and moved on her bed. The bed didn't feel as comfortable as before. She'd have to get some workers on that. In fact, it felt much smaller as well. The goddess of the moon opened her eyes and she noticed she was not in her quarters constructed by her loyal followers. She was in what she could only describe as some commoner's bedroom. Worried, she noticed she was not in this bed alone. She saw a hand right next to her. Her eyes trailed up the hand to the arm until her mouth dropped. She stared into the gaze of Emperor Uzumaki Naruto, her new husband. He looked as equally surprised as her. So, should I call you darling, or should you call me honey? He asked nervously. Tsukuyomi felt her eyes roll into the back of her head. The goddess of the moon passed out again. Good start, I guess. At least she didn't scream, Naruto thought to himself before he got out of bed and began to start his day. Mother, you can't be serious. Your preference for Uzumaki Naruto aside, he's just a mortal. Why would you allow Tsukuyomi to marry him? It upsets every rule that you've worked to establish. A man, with powerful arms, shoulders, and a firm, muscular face, exclaimed angrily while the other gods stood around the palace room. Another, a woman with long red hair, her face as serious as her demeanor, nodded. Raijin's rudeness aside, I am inclined to agree. Mother, what are you thinking? We've long accepted that Uzumaki Naruto's existence is not a normal one. It seems that no matter what he turns into, it affects the very nature of universal balance. However, there's never been one of these young men that have married a god. What will we do, should they conceive? The woman asked, which seemed to make the man, Raijin, scowl with rage. His beloved older sister consummating with a mortal. He'd never let that happen. Kami looked over her children and held her hand for silence. I understand your concerns, Amaterasu. Rest assured, I know what I'm doing. Besides, I do believe this is a good time to properly monitor why the existence known as Uzumaki Naruto has such a particular existence. In Tsukuyomi's haste to replace the Naruto that was killed too early, she sent another to that world. In that world, Naruto was to be a hero who became Hokage. He would have 2 children with Hyuga Hinata. That was the plan, but now everything is not progressing in a manner that I can't see. This Naruto, he was from a world my sister and I only operated with sparingly. I cannot see the line of destiny where he shall be led. Under the guise of Tsukuyomi's punishment, I can leave her to observe him. I will contact her whenever is available, she answered. A spark of lightning moved through Raijin's body. He didn't like this. He sure as hell didn't like this. The thought of a worthless mortal putting his hands on his sister's divine body was enough to nearly make him explode. Everyone saw this as well. Mother, another voice, this one from a slim man. His form was notably shorter than the others. His face was rather sleek, almost like that of a woman. His white hair was tied into that of a ponytail. Everyone turned to him. Is it also possible that you're doing this because of the concerning dreams you've been having as of late? Have they not ceased? He asked. Kami placed her head in her hands. I wish it were not the case, Fujin. Unfortunately, I can't say it's not possible. Perhaps, there is a destiny which even I am not aware of just yet. You are all dismissed. Please, continue to maintain the universal balance. Leave Naruto to Tsukuyomi. I'm sure this will prove to be a valuable lesson for her, she said while her children nodded. Would you like me to relay this newest to our aunt? A woman, her form regal and her speech as wonderful as the ocean itself asked. She moved a piece of her short, blue hair from the side of her face. Kami smiled. That is most kind of you, Sujin. I have not met my sister in a little while and it would do well to speak with her even if I do not agree with her methods in helping us keep balance. Please do so and send her my regards, the mother of the gods said. Sujin smiled and bowed before Kami dismissed all of her children. One by one, they all returned to their own duties. When Kami looked at all she'd created, she shivered when she imagined the encroaching darkness entering her palace, destroying numerous worlds and universes. Even more than that, she could tell if this was from mortal or god. She could not see the fate nor the path of this encroaching darkness that seemed to threaten all that she and Yami had worked for. She didn't even know how to prepare for it or defend against it. All she prayed for was that this had nothing to do with Tsukuyomi's actions regarding her favorite blonde. Meanwhile, in his quarters, Raijin's attendants shivered as he threw a chair at the wall. He screamed as lightning coursed through his muscular body. Tsukuyomi is mine. Mine. No one else will touch her except for me. Why does mother even like him? Now she's even giving over my sister to the likes of one of them. Uzumaki Naruto, don't think your existence is equal to ours. I'm the only one worthy of my sister. I'm the one. Raijin said to himself as his chest heaved. Across every world where thunder reigned, the skies darkened with vicious storms. He was not going to let this happen. He'd rather go into the endless void that let a mortal touch his older sister. He then licked his lips. That was his job. And his job alone. Tsukuyomi groaned as she opened her eyes. She heard the sound of birds chirping outside. It's not a dream. It's actually not a dream. I'm actually married to a mortal. The famous or infamous Uzumaki Naruto no less. I don't know whether to cry, scream, or laugh, the goddess of the moon thought to herself before she heard the sounds of someone grunting. When she turned her head, she noticed her apparent spouse shirtless, performing one-armed pull-ups. She noticed a plate of food along with lovely fruits lined for her on the nightstand. It was hardly the quality of food she was used to eating, but she was kind of hungry. Ever since her divinity had been suspended, she couldn't just stave off the particular desire to eat. It wasn't like she could remain satisfied just passively ingesting the will of her followers to keep her going. Now, she was embarrassed when her stomach growled. The noise alerted Naruto and he turned to her. Ah, you're awake. Good morning, honey, he teased while Tsukuyomi placed her head down. This was not supposed to happen, she said while he laughed. Truth be told, I didn't think that was gonna happen either. I tried to think of something outrageous that most likely wouldn't happen, Dadbeo. Well, hey, you're a goddess, right? I doubt my life will live as long as yours. You'll be rid of me before you know it, he said. Tsukuyomi thought on that for a moment. That was true. Despite his odd circumstances, Naruto wasn't immune to the Shinigami. Even this one made it to around 80 years. Surely she could be patient for about that long. Hell, she'd had to monitor a world where there was only night for 100 years. That went by pretty quickly. Light. That was a light at the end of the tunnel. The goddess then leaned up and pointed at the plate. Is this for me? She asked. He nodded. Probably not what you're used to, but it's what I could procure for now. At least you won't go hungry, he said as he continued his exercises. Without another word, Tsukuyomi reached out for the plate and grabbed it. She then ate the food offered to her. Indeed, it wasn't to her usual quality, but it was still rather tasty. She didn't think to exactly compliment it though. It was good for a mortal's dish. So how do you plan on dealing with the threat? She asked, deciding to make conversation. Naruto, having finished his pull-ups, moved on to his push-ups. Well, like I told you last time, I'll need to lay the groundwork for not only improving Konoha, but also the other nations. Then, I'll have to get them to become one nation. What's that famous quote? United we stand, divided we fall. He asked while Tsukuyomi shrugged as she bit into a piece of buttered toast. He eyed her for a moment and paused his work. And what exactly are you going to be doing? He asked. Whatever you need me to do. I was sent here to aid you. That means I'm basically at your whim as long as it's within my power. However, I've lost most of my divine abilities, so I can only do a portion of what I had. As I am the goddess of the moon, I assume you can imagine I'm strongest when my domain comes into the night. Now, it would be Amaterasu's realm while I would work on the other side of the world, she said. The blonde sighed. Now he was getting into god talk. How surreal could coming to a new world be? Now that I think about it. Before you asked for me, why did you not ask to bring your wives? I had assumed you would have loved to have them at your side again, Tsukuyomi said. All she got was silence, so she turned to Naruto. She wasn't expecting to see the crestfallen look on his face. The black-haired woman watched him close his eyes, desperate to keep the tears off his face. Are they in paradise? He asked. Why yes, Tsukuyomi replied, slightly concerned for why her spouse suddenly looked so miserable. She saw his lips curve upwards. Then, I have no right to take them from that. If life has no more use for them, then they've fully deserved their rest. I won't deprive them of it, he said before he reluctantly continued his work, unaware of the way Tsukuyomi looked at him. Though she didn't like her situation, she couldn't help feeling regret for her tactless comment. She'd never seen her loved ones die before. They were always eternal, in one shape or form. However, that wasn't the case with mortals. I see, she said quietly. The two settled in silence before there came a puff of smoke right next to the blonde. Both noticed small blade appear in front of him. Good morning, Naruto-sama, she said. She noticed the woman in her master's room, but she made no comment. He continued with his exercises. Good morning, small blade. Have you done as I've ordered? He asked. Yes, sir. The message to all root forces aside from those deep in enemy territory have been ordered to come back. Also, per your orders we've laid out the materials in front of the remaining members. They are currently deciding what they'd like to do for hobbies, she said. He nodded. Very good. I'll be by the base later. In the meantime, don't neglect your own training. Make sure they continue their breathing exercises and the training regime I've prescribed to each of them. If you find anyone disobeying orders, then they are to be punished, he said. Understood. Naruto-sama, she said with a deep bow. When he finished his exercises, he patted her head. Good work, small blade. I'm proud of you, he said. She nodded and then left without another word. He grabbed a towel while Tsukuyomi observed him. What was that? She asked. He smiled. I don't need drones. I need living, breathing, thinking people that will be able to handle making critical decisions with the best outcome in mind. I have to work on getting rid of those years of mind control and memory manipulation that Danzo worked into them. I've read their files and some of them aren't even from Konoha. It's a delicate matter, he said. He said as he finished his exercises by circulating the pure chakra through his body. It was unfortunate, but this world had no pure chakra, so he'd have to find the earth's veins and strengthen them himself. Oh, actually, dear wife, think you could find the planet's chakra veins? Naruto asked, a smile on his face. Tsukuyomi felt an odd shiver run through her body. That was going to take some getting used to. Chakra veins? She asked. He looked at her, confused. You do know what chakra is, right? You've ruled like how many universes? Surely you'd know, he said while Tsukuyomi chuckled nervously. Yeah, I would know, she replied while the former emperor placed his head in his hands. You have no idea, do you? He asked. The goddess of the moon held her head down. And no, I don't. However, I can find out. I'm still a goddess. I have resources at my disposal as well. I'll have an answer for you by the end of the day, she said with assurance. Naruto nodded and finished his pure chakra meditation. That would be a great help. If these forces are truly coming to this world, then we'll need to make it stronger as well. These people will need every advantage they can get, he said before he took note of two large chakra signatures coming his way. A knock came to his door. He stood up and opened his room door. Tsukuyomi slipped her feet from the bed and tried to stand on the ground to follow her husband. How do humans use these things? Tsukuyomi thought as she tried to figure out her first task, walking like a human. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki walked to his front door and peered out its peephole. He noticed two Chunin waiting for him. He opened the door and greeted them. Can I help you? He asked. Team 7 has been ordered to appear in front of Lord Hokage. You were the last on our route. Make sure you get dressed, one of them said. With their business done, they walked away while the whiskered blonde closed the door. Naruto's lips curved upwards. He'd been expecting something like this. He just didn't assume it would happen so soon. Well, this was good in and of itself. The young man heard some stumbling down the hall. When he turned his head, he noticed Tsukuyomi leaning against the wall, trying to walk into the living room. Could she not walk? You need some help? He asked. I am the goddess of the moon. I have handled celestial troubles that your mortal mind could not comprehend. I can handle something as basic as walk. The black-haired woman wasn't able to finish achievements before her new legs buckled. She gasped as she fell on her. She then groaned. How the hell do mortals even do this? Now, don't mistake Tsukuyomi. Of course she knew how to walk, but walking upon the divine realm was clearly not the same as walking in the mortal world apparently. She didn't know why, but something about this world felt heavier. Was it the damn gravity? While Tsukuyomi sighed, wondering why she was forced to suffer this, she looked up and noticed her new husband in front of her. He held out his hand for her to take. Well, her pride was already in pieces, so why not? She grabbed his hand and he pulled her up. He then carefully led her to his couch. When she was safely there, he moved back. I'll be heading to the Hokage and meeting with the rest of the team. I'll be back later, he said while she nodded. And I will attempt to grant you the information that you seek before the day is over, she returned. With their roles being assigned, Naruto walked into the shower and took a quick bath. He then brushed his teeth, got dressed, and left while Tsukuyomi watched him go. As soon as he closed the door, a figure landed next to her. Please forgive me, Tsukuyomi-sama. Because I was too slow in my assignment, The goddess of the moon held up her hand to her attendant. I'm angry enough without blaming you or myself, Tsukuyomi. As Naruto said, it should only be at most 100 years before he dies. Then I'll be free to continue my duties like this never happened. Besides, this is partially my fault as well, she said. But what will you do when he discovers you're lying? She asked. I'm working on it, Tsukuyomi exclaimed with a lot of anger which made Tsukuyomi shiver. Despite her mistress having lost most of her divine power, her aura was still more than enough to make the greatest of them tremble. Why yes, ma'am, she responded while the goddess of the moon placed one leg over the other. She inhaled and exhaled. Look, like it or not, this is also something Mother decided. I can't go against her. For all intents and purposes, I'm married to a mortal. You and the others will be working with him. Don't make this more difficult for me than it already is. I expect you to treat him with the same courtesy that you would me regardless of how you feel about it. To that end, you will help me help him. Head into the earth and find me these things known as chakra veins. Naruto wants to know their location, the goddess said. The blonde woman quickly bowed. Understood, Tsukuyomi-sama. It shall be done, Tsukuyomi said. She saluted her and then vanished in a wonderful display of clear water. Tsukuyomi leaned her head against the couch and closed her eyes. What a day. Quickly creating a clone to head to Ichiraku Ramen for its job, Naruto entered the Hokage mansion. The receptionist greeted him and informed him that his team was waiting for him. He thanked her and climbed the stairs before he knocked on the door. Enter, came the voice of the Hokage. He opened the door. He noticed Kakashi, Sasuke, and Sakura waiting for him. As he expected, his two academy friends didn't seem too pleased to see him. In fact, Sakura looked outright terrified of him. As for Sasuke, well, he was eyeing the blonde cautiously. When he lined up with the others, Hiruzen smiled. Well, thank you for joining us, Naruto-kun, he said. Wouldn't miss it, he answered. The old man smiled and then turned back to Team 7. All right everyone. I thank you for meeting with me on such short notice. I can tell you've all had an interesting test to say the least. I can at least say you're the first team where a potential genin has challenged a jonin and two other potential genin. I've talked it over with the council and we've agreed to allow this slight deviation as a success for everyone. Congratulations to all of you for becoming genin under Jonin Hitaki Kakashi, he said. We passed. But I don't really feel like I did anything. All I did was run away and retrieve Hokage-sama. Oh well, at least I get to stay with Sasuke-kun. Sakura thought to herself. Opposed to her, Sasuke was glad for this. While he was angry at the circumstances surrounding their passage, he wasn't going to knock it. That meant he wouldn't be sent back to the academy. He would also begin the steps of finding his brother and making him pay for what he had done. Naturally, when Naruto looked at Kakashi, he could tell the Hokage told the Jonin about the circumstances surrounding all of them. It made sense since the one-eyed man kept trying to sneak a glance at him. Now, Sarutobi smiled when he turned to Sakura and Sasuke. Now then, I do believe you both have some questions. Please understand that some cannot be answered for natural security reasons, but I will answer what I can for you, he said. How does Naruto have the wood release of Shadaime Hokage? Sakura asked. Well, if nothing else, at least the female genin knew not to waste time on senseless questions. Hiruzen sighed. He took a puff of smoke from his pipe and exhaled a stream of it through his teeth. A difficult question to answer, but one that delves deep into the history of Konoha. You see, even before the founding of Konoha, back when the Senju and the Uchiha were the most dominant clans in the world, the Senju had a particular relationship with another clan. It was clan that many feared, which led to their eventual destruction. That would be the Uzumaki clan, he answered. Sakura blinked. Uzumaki clan. You mean, Naruto's last name is actually from a very powerful clan? She asked. When the Hokage nodded, the pink-haired girl felt her world crumble to pieces. You mean Naruto, the loser, was from a clan that rivaled the Senju and the Uchiha? How the hell was that possible? Who are his parents then? Sasuke asked. Sakura seemed intrigued to know as well, but the Sandaime shook his head. That I cannot tell you. However, what I can tell you is that his mother was a member of the Uzumaki clan. Now, the Uzumaki clan had close ties to the Senju clan. They were well known for not only their sealing arts, but they were also known for having a rather strong life force. If an Uzumaki trained, maintained an adequate diet, and stuck to core fundamentals, they could easily live to the age of 200. There have even been rumors of one of them living to about 300 back in the early days of the clan, he said. T300. Sakura exclaimed. No wonder Minato-sensei needed a second home. He couldn't handle Kushina-sama, Kakashi thought to himself. Sasuke glared at Naruto and the blonde just grinned at him. However, they all continued to pay attention. The clan had such ties to the Senju that the Shadaime married one of them, Uzumaki Mito. He was not the only Senju to do this. Many Senju intermingled with the Uzumaki. Now, we're not sure if Naruto-kun received the wood release from Hashirama's blood or if it was hidden in the body of another Senju that gave birth to his mother, but it is entirely possible and that manifested itself when he was born. We asked him to not showcase these abilities for there are many who covet the wood release of the Senju clan, he answered. Sasuke held up a hand. Wait, if these Uzumaki were so powerful, then how come we didn't learn about them in Konoha's history? In fact, how is he even the last one? The Uchiha asked, pointing to Naruto. Sarutobi sighed. Remember when I said they were feared? Well, they were so feared that a combined assault of villages attacked them. Konoha lended aid where they could, but we were still recovering from the effects of the war. By the time we'd grown in strength, it was already too late. I'm sure there are still some Uzumaki out there in the world, but they've most likely gone into hiding, he replied. And can those Uzumaki use the wood release? Sakura asked. Hiruzen shrugged. I wouldn't count out the idea. As for why they weren't taught in your history classes, that too I cannot tell you. However, it would involve many considering the Uzumaki is a cursed clan. That said, I want all of you to remember that Konoha might not be where it is now without them. Even the swirl on the back of Konoha's flak jackets pays honor to them for what they've done, he said. Well, what about the other jutsu he used? He even used fire jutsu. I've never known Naruto to do that. Sakura pointed out. The Sandaime chuckled. Well, when we first learned Naruto-kun could perform the wood release, we got to training him immediately. It was meant to prepare him to take control of both the Senju and Uzumaki clans. Just like with Sasuke-san, he would take over the clans when he came of age. Regrettably, we asked him to make the sacrifice to fail his grades so as to not draw attention to himself. No one would expect the last of the academy to have such a powerful and valuable family ancestry. As for why he decided to use it now, we allowed him because it would have been known to his Jonin-sensei eventually, Hiruzen answered. Naruto tried not to chuckle. So that's the story we're going with. Well, can't expect these children to keep secrets like me supposedly being from the future. Still, a rather intricate story for only being made up now, he thought. Wait, how can he be the clan heir of both clans? If I recall, isn't Senju Tsunade-sama still alive? She's proclaimed as the greatest medic nin in the world. She's also known as the strongest kunoichi in the world too. Many kunoichi aspire to be like her. Isn't she the heir to the Senju clan? Sakura asked. Ah, now there was a question that still needed looking into. While Tsunade is technically the clan head of the Senju clan, for various circumstances, she has not been in the service of Konoha for a number of years. We couldn't do much about it because she was the only Senju left. With Naruto around, that makes the matter complicated. So we've decided to give her the courtesy. If she wishes to keep her title of Senju clan head or heir, then we'd ask for her to return to Konoha and verify such. If not, then the council is provided the authority to revoke her status to clanship. This was a rule brought on by the Nadaime Hokage to prevent a clan from dying out in Konoha if the oldest was assumed too unfit to lead, he answered. I think I understand, Sakura said. Good. Now, I don't want you thinking I've shown you any favoritism. I only passed you because Kakashi claims you did show proper methods of teamwork. Sakura, sometimes retreating to gather stronger forces is a noble effort. Kakashi and Sasuke showed welcome prowess between teacher and student. As for Naruto-kun, Well, you've at least shown to protect an objective from multiple sources which can allow others to reach your position. We're willing to acknowledge this as a passing grade so long as all of you learn that teamwork must always be recognized in the success of a mission. Do your best in the efforts of Konoha, he said. They all saluted him and he stood up from his desk. Good. Now then, let's make our way to the assignment desk for your first mission, he said. With that, Team 7 followed the Hokage out of the room. As they walked towards the academy, Sarutobi spoke. Also, I have advised Naruto-kun to not use his wood release more than is needed. There are still many enemies who would love to have the Shadaime's Kekai Genkei as part of their arsenal. I will ask you two to not spread this knowledge either. Do so and I will be forced to imprison you, he said. Sakura gulped, but nodded. Sasuke firmly nodded as well. The team entered the room, and there they saw numerous shinobi behind a desk with tons of papers and scrolls. Hiruzen sat behind the desk and was handed a scroll. That was when Naruto sighed. He knew what was coming. He'd seen them in Iruka, Mizuki, and Danzo's memories. All right then. As you're a new team, you can have your choice of 3D rank missions. We have a retirement home that needs groceries delivered, the Inuzuka kennel needs its dogs walked, and a couple would like their garden watered, he said. Sasuke and Sakura thought they heard wrong while Kakashi smiled. Naruto rolled his eyes. D rank missions. X. H. Tsubaki asked as she listened to the doctor's report. Yes, your mother's vitals are stronger than I've ever seen. It's nothing short of a miracle. I wouldn't be so quick to discharge her from the hospital, but I think at least you'll be able to spend more time with her. I estimate at least another 8 to 10 months at least, he said. Tsubaki felt tears well up in her eyes before she placed her head in her hands. He was right. He saved my mother. I can't believe it. I've still got some time. Thank you. Thank you so much, Naruto-san. The former lover of Mizuki thought while the doctor patted her shoulder. We'll continue to take care of her. You're free to visit her if you wish, but don't stay for too long. She still needs her rest, he said. Tsubaki nodded. And her medication? She asked. The doctor pulled up his clipboard and filled through a few sheets of paper. The Chunin sat nervously in her chair, the sounds of the flipping paper making her more anxious with each sound. Well, we're sorry we pushed you for payment that time, but this was due to the fact that it would require a lot to keep her going. Now, we'll settle into her old routine. We can arrange the previous payment plan for you. If you're willing, that is, he returned. Yes. Yes, thank you, the young woman said, her feelings basically exploding around her at the same time. Nothing but sheer bad news could break the smile from her face. Understood. We'll arrange that for you immediately. Have a good day, Tsubaki-san, the doctor said before he left the room. Meanwhile, the woman put her head in her hands again. Naruto kept his word. He saved her mother with no tricks or deception. Now, all he needed was her help. He promised her it wouldn't be for anything illegal. He'd already kept his word once. Granted, she didn't know how he healed her mother, but she wasn't about to complain. That gave her more than enough time to find someone capable of healing her mother's illness. Standing up, Tsubaki walked to her mother's room and smiled as she closed the door behind her. She visited her mother and spoke with her for a time. When Naruto came home, he grumbled as he was dismissed from his work, but he already knew tomorrow would be no easier. Before he was dismissed, Kakashi would ask for him to arrive at the Hokage mansion. No doubt they would be seeking more information. Well, he signed up for that so he wouldn't complain. Now what he would complain about was the state of his home. He saw a broken table, broken plates and cups, a couch torn in two, and dented pots and pans in his sink. He blinked. Damn, it's like my room got hit by a damn cyclone, he thought before he noticed a mountain of torn clothes in a pile in the living room. It was then that he heard a crash in his bedroom. When he walked inside, he noticed another pile of clothes that were pulled out of his closet. His mouth thinned. My wife is a goddess, and an idiot. I could make a book about that, he thought as he saw Tsukuyomi's head appear from the clothes like a fish jumping out of the water. Foul mortal garments. How dare you defy me? She said while Naruto took into account his new wife's appearance. Her garments look a little singed. Her hair looked absolutely frazzled and there seemed to be a smudge of soap on her face. Having fun over there? He asked as Tsukuyomi jumped, not having heard her unfortunate husband coming home. When she turned around to face him, she saw the smug look on his face. That absolutely annoyed her. No, she was not having a fun time. Everything had gone wrong when he left. Tsukuyomi knew nothing of mortal appliances. She didn't know how to work a stove or an oven. She was hungry. She wanted to order someone to procure food for her, but most of her followers were off finding the chakra veins for Naruto. That left her on her own. I am a goddess. There is no way I should be living like this. Help me out of this mess, she ordered. The blonde laughed. Please help me, dear husband, he said to her while she growled. Help me before I curse your soul to walk the burning sands of the tormented isles for a millennium. She exclaimed. He raised an eyebrow and walked into the room before sitting on his bed. Oh, I guess you don't need my help. All right, I'll let you figure that out on your own, he said as he started writing on a scroll. I do not like you, she said while he only chuckled. For the next half an hour, Tsukuyomi tried to release herself, but she'd still been struggling to walk. The clothes were very heavy. She couldn't believe this. She had a new appreciation for her maids. How did they handle all of this? Finally, her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten anything since dinner. All her attempts to free herself amounted to nothing. Then, she had to suffer her husband's growing smile. There was no way she was going to give him the satisfaction of seeing her ask for his help. That was her resolve, an hour ago. She sighed. Dear husband, please help your wife out of this predicament. I would be eternally grateful for your assistance, she said sweetly, trying to keep her own irritation down while Naruto sighed. Well, I guess I wouldn't be a good husband if I left you to suffer, he said as he stood up. He then moved the clothes and held the goddess out. She dusted herself off while he created a few clones to clean up the place. We'll get you understanding on what everything does tomorrow, he said. And why do I need to learn this meaningless stuff? She asked. Naruto shrugged. I mean, if you misuse the equipment, you might set fire to the apartment. If that happens, you might burn the building down. We'll then end up homeless. Surely you won't want to be homeless. What would your mother say? He asked. Am I being blackmailed? Tsukuyomi thought before she found herself nodding without another word. Who the hell said mortals were easy to manipulate? She'd curse whoever said that. As soon as they were situated, the two noticed a bright light enter the room. When it faded, both noticed a woman kneeling before them. Tsukuyomi quickly recognized the woman as Tsukuyomi. Tsukuyomi-sama. Naruto-sama, I've found what you asked for. Here is the report, the blonde woman said, her voice oddly pleasing to Naruto's ears, before she took notice of him. He is shorter than I thought, she said while Tsukuyomi growled. Clearly, her charge had forgotten what she said earlier today. However, Naruto snorted. Yeah, well, technically, I am 12. I didn't choose to come in this body, he replied before he took the report from the blonde divine being. The woman looked at him before she looked towards her mistress. He certainly has the warrior's tongue for such a small thing, she replied to her master while Tsukuyomi placed her head in her hands. Indeed, that was true. Meanwhile, Naruto looked over the report. Tsukuyomi stood next to him. What you would call chakra veins lay deep within the earth. It took some time to find them, but we discovered a string of blue lined in the rock. Would that be them? She asked. Naruto frowned, but continued reading. It sounds like it, but they aren't supposed to be blue. They're supposed to be green. Well, they were green in my world when I first discovered them. It could be one of the reasons why this world is behind in strength. Many would assume that chakra is the combination of physical and spiritual energy. While that's true, that's not all it's defined by. Many don't know this, but it's also based on the environment that you live in. When people are born and when they live, they take in small traces of the world's energy. That's why people in Konoha are more aligned to fire jutsu, but some can be aligned to other natures. It's possible because of the world's impure chakra that their chakra was affected, he said. Unfortunately, neither Tsukuyomi nor Tsukuyomi knew what that meant, but it didn't matter. What did matter was that now he could make next steps. Thank you, Tsukuyomi-san. Also, thank you, my dear wife. The blonde said before he opened the window and dashed out of the apartment. Tsukuyomi looked at her mistress. Why is this room such a mess? She asked. One more word and when I regain my godhood, I'll make you monitor the edge of the void realm for 10,000 years. Tsukuyomi replied. Wisely, the blonde left her master alone to finish the rest of her duties. With her being left alone, Tsukuyomi felt her stomach rumble. While she hated her circumstances, she hoped her husband returned home soon. She was hungry. She wasn't used to being hungry and having to wait. Meanwhile, within the root base, Small Blade and those behind her stood in front of those who just returned. She stood in front of the more senior members. Who ordered us back? We have no received word from Danzo-sama, one of them said. Danzo is no longer the operator of Root. He has handed authority over to another. You are also in no position to question me. We were all gathered here to prepare for his arrival, Small Blade said while those opposite of her narrowed their eyes behind their masks. Who is arriving? The senior asked. That would be me. The Root operatives who had just returned tensed when everyone gazed up to see Naruto leaned against a railing. Small Blade and the other Root operatives that resided in Konoha at the time bowed their heads to him. Good work, Small Blade, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki said before he turned to the others. Shimura Danzo-kun has been indisposed for the time being. He's given me full control over Root and all of its forces. I have appointed Small Blade as the second in command of Root. When I am not here, you all shall listen to her orders. I wouldn't recommend rebellion. Before Naruto could finish, he sensed two senior Root Anbu operatives behind him. They grabbed their Tonto and were ready to take his head from his shoulders. After that, they would quickly begin the location and rescue of Danzo to restore order to their division. They all knew of Uzumaki Naruto. Some had even monitored him. There was no reason for Danzo to give the man charge over Root. That was what most believed until the two Root members suddenly landed and dropped to their knees. Their masked faces bashed into the floor just inches from Naruto's feet. Their sword clanged on the ground in front of everyone. Won't go well for you, Naruto finished before he asked for Small Blade. The young Hyuga knelt beside him while the two incapacitated Root members tried to stand. However, their heads were pinned where they laid while the whiskered blonde pointed to them. Put those two in cells. No food or water for 1 week, he said. Yes, Naruto-sama, she said before she called for two members to take the two into cells. Once they were disposed of, Naruto turned back to the others. Would anyone else like to try their hand at the lottery? He asked. Once no one seemed interested, he noticed them all bow their heads to him. Of course, he wasn't stupid to think that there weren't those who'd try to challenge his authority at some point, but he'd welcome the fun. When he saw their heads bowed, Naruto nodded. He then reached into his pouch. Very good. Now then, I want all of you to start practicing the contents in this scroll. Before you even think about going out on other assignments, we'll all be taking a little excursion of sorts. Also, to prove that I'm not worthy of you following me, you may challenge me at any time. Should I ever lose, then I'll willingly hand over the Root operations to you. Deal? He asked. All of them looked at each other and then they looked at him. The smile on his face almost deterred any of them from acting. They didn't even know how he handled the two senior members. However, for those reluctant, they took the offer for what it was worth. They'd study him and watch him. Then they would beat him and they would find Danzo for the truth. Yes, Naruto-sama, everyone said before they heard him chuckle. Oh, trust me, my cute Root agents. You're gonna wish you didn't say that, he said as a flash of red moved through his eyes.